That debate you had with Peter Schiff was brutal. I turn that clown off anymore because he's so disingenuous.
And so the whole like intrinsic value argument, I'm like, come on, Peter, are you kidding me? Like I literally quoted Mises to him. You know, value does not inhere in things. It exists within us.
I had a terrible ego. And the best thing that ever happened to me was that incident that just crushed my spirit.
They try to control media. They try to control money. They try to suppress dissenters with violence and coercion and fear and all the things. What better soil to plant the seed of uncounterfeitable money into? I couldn't even imagine a better situation.
Paper money will always return to its intrinsic value. Zero.
So you discovered about yourself that you are someone that can push themselves to failure.
I just lifted the nose up to about 70 degrees, kept it burning, and I thought, I'm going to see how high this thing will go.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. No thought process whatsoever.
This is that misallocation of capital we always talk about in all government spending. Right here.
Don't interrupt a great story
Sorry.
with facts. So, if you're struggling and really having a tough time in life, just know that sometimes all you have to do is get through it. You just got to get through it. And there'll be people that come up to you and they'll try to do everything they can to help you, but sometimes that doesn't help.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you just got to sit there in the ashes.
Thank you, first of all, for coming to Miami to talk to me. You have a very unconventional career path that spans from oil field worker to artist. Maybe we could just start there. I think you've got a very interesting story. And could you just walk us through all these different occupations you've had and how you've changed over the years?
Well, I won't go into too much depth. I don't want to bore people, but you're right. I have an unusual background in Bitcoin. First off, thanks for having me down here. It's great. I love your podcast. One of the reasons is because you have an audience that's not just strictly Bitcoin. So today I'm hoping that I have a chance to talk to fellow Bitcoiners, maybe new Bitcoiners, maybe Bitcoiners to be, which would be excellent.
Which is everybody.
It's happening. So it's a really great opportunity there. And of course, I just took up scuba diving. I'm always reinventing myself, and now I've got a new hobby, and I'm really getting into it. And photography. So I'm going to go diving on the reefs here after we do our podcast. So I'm very excited about it. But yeah, we should tell people because first off, anything I say today, it's not financial advice. I didn't even get out of high school. I was expelled from high school for hitting a teacher. And it was a male teacher. And really, my life could have ended right there. 17 years old, that's it. You're done. You're in the system, out of the house, taken away by authorities. But they didn't press charges. The teacher didn't. And so I got to continue on with my life. And my mom and dad said, hey, you don't need to go back to school. And I had always loved aviation. I was one of those crazy kids. I loved aviation, always. My mom and dad said, hey, we'll pay for you to get a private pilot's license right now. And it was cheap. I mean, it was not very expensive in those days. And so I got a pilot's license. And when I was done with it, you can't do anything with it. If you want to fly commercially, you've got to get hours. So I ended up flying like a used car salesman for airplanes. And I mean, here's what he would do. I was 17 years old. He'd give me a bus ticket. I'd go down the Greyhound station. I'd get on a bus and go somewhere. And he would buy us plane sight unseen. And I'd get in the plane, and I remember this. I would find the owner's manual, and I looked how to start it and continue. I flew a plane one time, Robert, all the way from Florida to Greeley, Colorado, with no navigational equipment in it whatsoever. Even the wet compass was broken. So it was an experience, I survived that.
How do you do that?
You follow a lot of roads.
You follow roads? Wow.
Yeah, IFR. I follow roads. So when I got up there and I got my hours, the 250, you can't do anything with it. You need to have a degree. So I went back to college and I dropped out again. I actually dropped out of college. So I went there for a year and dropped out. And then I started working in the oil fields out west. I drifted out west. And that was a rough job. And along my travels there, I had left off an application at a police department, kind of a small city, about 40,000 people. And they contacted me one time after I was out in the oil fields. It was middle of winter. It sucked. And I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become a cop. And it was a really Western rough town. I mean, this was back in the 70s, and there were real cowboys and Indians in this town that had miners, oil field workers, railroad workers. We had small gang activity, and we had 8,000 college students. And Playboy magazine in those days wrote about this particular campus as being like the wildest, most intoxicated campus in the country.
Wow.
And so they would all come down on Saturday and Friday night. And I'm telling you right now, it was a place where you couldn't go in a bar in uniform by yourself. And, I mean, they might kick the living shit out of you. I remember, I was told this recently, the very first time I met my staff sergeant, he gave me a big helmet, a big riot helmet. And he said, son, just put this on anytime you go in a bar. And so it was interesting. But, you know, I'm to tell you, it sucked the soul out of me after a while. And I finally, after 2 or 3 years, I drifted south. I left the police department, and I drifted south across the high plains in Colorado and ended up in the high country in the mountains there and worked as a miner, a real miner underground. It was deep rock mining, like 5 to 10,000, almost 2 miles down.
Wow.
I'm telling you, when you get down that deep
Was
in the
this
earth,
coal mining? What are you mining now?
it was hard rock, and it was an interesting experience. I'm lucky I survived it. And you know, when you get down that deep, you can actually just feel the earth moving down there. I mean, you can, and it cracks. It's like being on an icy pond, a huge lake in the middle of the night, and you're standing in the middle of it. You can hear it crack.
Whoa.
You feel it all around you. But anyway, I better move along faster here. So I ended up at the end of that time, I was working underground, and I just felt like I was a loser, a nobody. And I asked my mom and dad, my parents, if, hey, can I live in your basement? I want to go back to college. And I did. And I drove a cab at night in Denver. And if anybody's familiar with Denver, if you remember the 5 Points area out there, if you're listening or watching this, it was really rough part of town. It was not a part of town you would go at night, but I drove a cab there and I made good money. And it put me through college. And you know, you could take out loans in those days. Do you remember when you could take a college loan out and it wasn't for profit? I mean, it was cheap, inexpensive. Even college was cheap.
And when was this?
This was back in the 80s.
80s.
And so I at the time, the Navy was hurting for pilots. I applied, and next thing you know, I was on my way down to Pensacola. If you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, I ended up getting introduced to a Marine DI really close and personal. You know, he was definitely invading my personal space, and they straightened my ass out pretty quick down there. I may have thought that, you know, I was a tough guy or something, but you know, those Marines, they fixed me. And then I ended up, because I had flown before and I was just extremely driven, I ended up getting a choice, whatever I wanted. And I picked F-18s, Hornets, which was the plane we were talking about earlier. It was in the Top Gun movie, the latest one. And then I got to go through Top Gun and actually got to be a Top Gun adversary instructor, which was like just going really fast with your hair on fire, just having the time of your life, just kicking ass, man. It was a blast. After that, I ended up in the Delta. I flew for Delta all over the world. I was a captain with them. And I had mentioned earlier, I was talking to somebody, unfortunately, I've always liked art. You know, I've always been into art. Even when I was everything, I've always loved art. And I built this beautiful chopper. I mean, it was gorgeous. I don't know, if I can think about it, I'll send you a picture of it later. It was on a magazine, a calendar.
It was a chopper motorcycle? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I built it in my house.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually, the first time this nurse met me that I later married, she came into the house and I had the engine all over the table, the dining room table, and I was welding on the floor like this, and it was a wood floor, you know, an 1880s house, and I'm welding in there. Man, I'll tell you, she is unbelievable, though. God, I'm so glad I met that woman. And so after that, unfortunately, I had a motorcycle accident and a brain injury on that bike. I mean, that thing was a killer. And I started doing full-time art and that type of thing. And so again, anybody listening here, I didn't get through high school. I dropped out of college. And, I've got a brain injury. So anything I say today, we should really just temper it with not financial advice again. Yeah. That's a long-winded. I'm sorry for taking up the time. But go ahead.
No. I have so many questions. Such a fascinating life arc, basically. So you said something, I think when you were a police officer, you said that it was sucking your soul and that you had to move on. Could you just elaborate on that? Like, what was it about that job that was sucking your soul?
Well, that's a tough. the thing is that when you're working in a town like that where everyone basically hates you,
Right, sure.
you begin to find yourself with a very limited number of friends. And those friends are all cops. And they are all maybe the wives of cops or the girlfriends of cops or cop followers or, it's just cops. And I could just feel my world shrinking down all around me. And, and I'm still very aware today of physical security. I mean, when I exit a door of a building, I always have my eyes just moving. I'm always looking around. And I found myself, always sitting places with my back to a wall, and it just started changing me mentally. And I have so much respect for people that are doing a good job, and still in that. I mean, I just have nothing but respect for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, right? If you're in a kind of a lawless town and you're working for the law, that it's probably a pressure cooker of sorts, right?
Exactly.
I mean, every weekend too, and people are partying, and sure, there's a lot of drinking and all that.
It was the most drinking place I think I've ever been to.
Yeah.
I don't want to name the town because there might be still people that are mad at me or
Right,
something.
right. Yeah, I guess my interpretation of that would be when I was at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is a party campus.
Exactly.
Although it's a dry campus, even though it's not a dry campus, it's officially dry, which means they don't have alcohol's not allowed, but of course it's everywhere. And the cops and the college kids had a, kind of a frictional relationship, to say the least. And as a college kid there, my perspective was, oh, these cops are assholes, and they are. They're kind of rough with you. They show up and they're just like, do this, do that. There's no friendly chit chat. But I would imagine that those personality traits are developed over time for good reason, right? Dealing with drunk college kids for
that's the thing.
X number of years, you eventually start to just deal with them.
Yeah, it just kind of, like I said, it sucks your soul out.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, another thing you mentioned, that the military guys in Pensacola, I think you said it was, they straightened you out really quick. Marines, I think you said they were. Yeah, Tell me about that. Like, what were you like going into that? And then what happened and what were you like coming out?
The Navy had a program then. And what they did is they took people like me off the street, college kids, and we would just show up. And then we had to get through this program to become an officer. They even made a movie one time called, you wouldn't know, but it was an Officer and a Gentleman. And so you show up, and I actually did show up on a motorcycle. And I had had an accident on the way down there. It sounds like I'm accident prone. And I had sliced my nose all the way, almost off, all the way from the front to the back. And I came down there and I got stitches from like some clown in an emergency room. They were like huge stitches, big black stitches holding my nose together. So I really stood out when I stood in line in front of those Marines. And it was like 5 a.m. They just threw a garbage can down this linoleum floor, down a hallway. And they're up screaming at you. And this guy looks at my nose and he must have thought, oh, this is going to be fun. So I'm telling you, they can work you until you fall down. And what was neat about this program, and I don't want to dwell on too much of this stuff, but what was neat about this program was this. At any moment in that program, all I had to do was go,
I quit.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. I've had enough.
Yeah.
Go like this. Yeah. You're out. You're never seen again. And I'm going to tell you what I learned about myself. When I want to do something, nobody is going to pry that from me. Nobody. I would have run down there until I dropped. I'd fall down unconscious until nobody was going to cheat me from what I wanted.
Right.
So,
which is what they're filtering for. Right? They want people that will go to the absolute limit. Right? They'll push themselves to an absolute limit.
I guess that's true. And one of the other things that they were really interested in, they wanted you to not be distracted. They wanted you to focus. And they wanted you to see, that was really it. That's it. Focus, don't be distracted, stay mission-oriented, do what we tell you. If you're jumping, we'll tell you how high. And they did that when they were done. So
you discovered about yourself that you are someone that can push themselves to failure, basically. Yeah. And then how did that develop? How did that led to your career as a fighter pilot? Like basically once you were established as someone that could do that, then how did that segue into becoming a fighter pilot?
I guess that's true in the sense that, like I said, I was determined. When I got through that class and they actually pinned an officer's insignia on me, then I started training. And I was focused, disciplined, and nobody was going to deny me what I wanted. And I wanted to fly fighters. And, I developed some personality traits that I wasn't that thrilled about, and which is that basically stay out of my way, don't get in front of my objective. And some of those things stand you really good. I mean, in Bitcoin, I'm going to tell you right now, with Bitcoin being the volatile beast that it is, some of these traits help you a lot. But as you go through life, at the end of your life, you do want to have friends around you. You do want to have people that love you. You want to have something that makes this journey worthwhile at the end. When you take that final breath and you cross the river Styx, the ferryman has you in his boat, and you look back on the other shore there, you look behind you, there'll be people that you left behind. All they're going to have are memories of you. And you take nothing with you. No sats, by the way, for any Bitcoiner out there. No matter how hard you're stacking, you don't take any sats with you. You just leave them behind, and that's it.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think you described your career as a fighter pilot as like hair on fire, hell of a good time. Like
it was.
Tell me about that. Like what is it like to fly a fighter jet? What do they do? Like I've heard these stories of like guys that used to take something called benzodrine or something. They'd fly for like 25 hours straight and all of it. Like, were you doing that kind of crazy stuff, or what was it?
Those were really long missions. The F-18 was a short mission. Get out there, get the job done. Well, I've flown on some really short missions. One of the shortest missions I ever flew on, which actually, I scared the shit out of myself. I was so puckered up, I could have sucked up the F-18 seat cushion through my ass. It was scary. And I'll tell you how you can apply this to Bitcoin. Right now, anybody that's listening to this, you should be thinking ahead. You got a plan. You don't know what's coming next. We could be down to 73K in 2 weeks from now. I guarantee it could happen. There's not much. There's a lot of air between 83 to 73K. Not a lot of data was changed there. Not a lot of Bitcoin. So we could have that hit that air gap, fall like in turbulence. But you've got to have a plan. What are you going to do if that happens? You've got to have a plan ahead of time. If you're going to sell your Bitcoin, you got to have a plan. How are you going to start lending out your Bitcoin when these products come down the road? Plan. You got to have a plan. Well, when you don't have a plan, I remember one time, and this is going to piss off people because, a lot of people don't realize this, but the military's budget is October to October. So in September, I was on the ship. We were cruising out in blue water ops. No, there's no place to land. So when you take off from the ship, you are going to come back to the ship, or you're going to be out there swimming with the sharks. You get a choice, two, and that's it. So we were out there, and we had extra money. And the thing is that if you have extra money in your coffer for like fuel, we had extra gas. You don't turn that back. At the end of the season, you don't want to give that money back to the Navy. And why? Because they're going to look at your squadron's budget and they're going to go, oh, they didn't
cut that.
Exactly. Cut that. Well, so the skipper says, hey, get all the JOs, that's me, junior officer, get all those JOs and fill them up with gas and so make them take off the end of the boat and go on a real short mission, burn the shit out of the fuel and come back.
This is that misallocation of capital we always talk about in all government spending. Right here. Go burn the gas just to burn the fucking gas and make the accountants happy.
Don't interrupt a great story with facts. So you're right. But the thing is that what's neat about it is, I had a clean jet, no ordnance on it, no weapons. It was clean, no tanks on it. They just filled the damn thing full of gas and said, hey, Jethro was my call sign. Jethro, get out there and burn the shit out of this. Well, they launched about 8 of us out there, all these JOs out there. And I knew, because I didn't have a plan, I thought, I wonder what I should do today. So when they launched and I went off the end of the carrier, I took a little cutaway like you do, so the carrier doesn't run over you if you go in the water. And I thought, ooh, I know what I'm doing. No thought ahead of time. I put that thing in burner and I started going up. I got up about almost 30, maybe 32,000, 34,000. I kept it in burner the whole time and I eased it over like this. That thing went supersonic like that. Wow. And I thought, oh, this is cool. And by the way, if you're wondering, supersonic is like nothing. In the cockpit, it's like nothing. You can't even feel it. If you're lucky and you're right on the edge, you can see it moving back along the plane or look in the mirrors. You can see it. It's pretty cool looking. But actually feeling it, there's nothing. So anyway, I got really fast and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to, with a wild hair up my ass, I just lifted the nose up to about 70 degrees, kept it in burner, and I thought, I'm going to see how high this thing will go.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. No thought process whatsoever. 50,000 feet is the limit on the Hornet, and one of it's because you should be wearing a pressure suit above that. So I went right through 50 like nothing. Got up to about 55,000, and there was this little twinkling in the back of my mind. I was kind of wondering about this, you know. Got up, and the plane started slowing, but it was still going, about 56, 57,000 feet. And, you know, when you get to 60, there's something called the Armstrong level. And that's where, like, you and I just sitting here at our body temperature, your liquids will start to boil off, you know, tears, saliva, you know, someday, at some point, blood. So in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh, I don't like this. And I shoved the stick forward, you know, nothing. There was no air up there. And the engine started winding down. And you know that the canopy is pressurized with that engine. It's pressurized. And there's not much pressure in a Hornet. And I thought, oh my God, this engine's gonna flame out. And it got real quiet. And there's nothing I could do. And I don't want to make this drag on. So I'll just kind of come to the end here. At the very end.
No, take your time. This is a very interesting
story. At the very end, I was praying, you know, I was one of those where, and again, the seat cushions up my ass and I'm just going, I'm so sorry, God, please let me, and the best thing I ever did was those throttles, I never touched them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why in a minute. So I never touched the throttles. I just left it there and it was real quiet. Oh, you know what? If there's any idiot out there right now, you know how some people are into conspiracy theories in Bitcoin. Okay. If there's any jackass out there that thinks the earth is flat, okay, I guarantee you it's not fucking flat. You can look out on the horizon. I actually could see, it got dark. I saw stars came out in the middle of the day and I could see the curvature of the earth off in the distance. So finally the plane just gave up. It went up to like 57 something, ran out again. And I could tell, I just felt myself lighten in the seat. And I thought, oh, thank God, I think I'm gonna make it. And then the plane fell backwards, straight backwards. And then its nose finally rolled over. And it took maybe 10,000 feet before I could really move the stick around. So here's the end of the story. I thought, oh man, I hope I don't get in trouble. That's what I was thinking at the time. I was thinking, you know, I wonder if they're watching me up here. They know what I just did. Am I going to get in trouble? And so I trapped back on board the ship and I was kind of sheepish because I'd scared myself. And I went down to the officer's mess down there, the dirty mess where pilots hung out in our khakis and stuff, our flight suits. And I was in there, I was real quiet. I was just sitting there and I got myself a big ice cream sundae just to make myself feel better. So I'm sitting in there just kind of staring off into space going, Jesus, that was scary. But I'm not telling anybody that. And a guy comes in, one of the other officers, junior officers, and he sits down there and he's very quiet too. And come to find out, he had done the exact same thing. And several of the guys did. And one of them did dick around with the throttles and he fotted the engine. That's like, this is really going to piss people off now. I just realized that. That's like $2 to $3 million.
So he broke the engine, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they had to replace it. I don't know if this is a good story I should have told, actually, just thinking about it. But
the statute of limitations has passed.
You just gotta have a plan in life. Yeah. And you know, the same thing with Bitcoin. You got to be planning. If you don't have a plan, then you're not studying hard enough. You're just not working the system enough to be. You got to have a plan.
Yeah. Why did so many guys do the same thing? Had you guys talked about that before?
No. It was. I think it was that idea that, you know, I got a full tank of gas. I'm on a DDA mission. That's day dick around.
Yeah.
And I got nothing I got to do. I got a clean airplane. And it was like, let's just see how high this thing can go.
Just test some boundary, basically.
Yeah.
Amazing. Why is your call sign Jethro?
There's an old show. You're too young, but there was an old show called Beverly Hillbillies, and
of course I know Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh well, yeah, okay. The main character, or not one of the main characters, Jethro Bodine. Of course. You know, he was like a fourth grade, you know, graduate. He was very smart. He was the kind of guy that had to take his shoes off to count past 10. But so that was my call sign.
That was it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't see how that fits, but you must have.
I got a lot smarter. You know, probably after the brain injury.
Gotcha. You learned a lot in the Air Force.
I did.
Wait, is it the Air Force or no?
Navy.
Navy. Okay, Navy. Sorry. Were you painting throughout your career, or is this something you got into later in life? Or like, how has your relationship with art developed throughout your career path?
I've always loved art, and it's something I've always done. Even while I was all these different jobs I was doing. But the thing is, it just wasn't the passionate full-time thing it is now since, and Bitcoin has allowed me to do that too. I mean, Bitcoin has empowered my art in the sense that although I'm represented in galleries around the country, I don't really care. I mean, all my wealth is in Bitcoin. And so every year I get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And I can paint what I want. I can do what I want. And it's a wonderful lifestyle. It gives you a lot of freedom to be creative and to do many different things that maybe things you've always wanted to do in your life. Maybe play the piano, maybe make wood figures.
Yeah, this is a beautiful thing about, I mean, really one of the main purposes of having wealth, right, is to have the freedom to do what you really want to do, right, to create the life of your dreams.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, if you ask most people, they'll come back with something like this. They'll say, if you ask them what you said, what does it mean to be free? They'll say something like this. I want to be free to do what I want, when I want, and with whom I want. And so, there's three things there that you better understand. If you're a Bitcoiner right now and you're thinking that's what I want in life, you better realize that you need to be in good shape. You got to be healthy. I'm 70 years old. I can still kick some major ass.
70, good for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to be that way until the day I die. What my goal is and what every Bitcoiner's goal is, you got to take care of yourself so that you can do these things, all these fun things that are coming your way. You want to live a life at the top of the pyramid there and then plateau across. And at the end of your life, when you're like 95 to 100, you want to fall off right away and just die, be done. And then when you think about when I want whatever it is, well, guess what? That means you better understand the concept of time. And time is precious. Health is more important than wealth. Time is precious. You get none back. Again, when you cross the river Styx, that's it. You're done. And then the last thing is with whom you want. And that means, as you go through life, you better realize that everything you say and do has some influence on people. Sometimes it's even what you don't say. And, at the end of your life, what you really want to think about when you look back over your shoulder, you want to see all the good things that you did, the changes in people's lives. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking here today with you is I want to get that message out to people that, time is finite. The Bitcoin train is leaving the station. You have a limited time to get this right. And at the end of it, you want to build something, a legacy, a dynasty for the people that you love and your friends.
Amen to that.
Yep.
I've got to go back to the health topic, though. I didn't realize you're 70 years old. You're quite spry for a 70-year-old man. What is your advice? What are your tips?
Well, Larry Lepard turned me on to a good book, but it just cemented things. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called Younger Tomorrow, I think. Cross is the author. And but the thing is, before then, I started working out when surprisingly enough, when I was a cop, because people were, beating up on me or they were, wrestling me. There was a lot of wrestling involved. And so I started lifting weights, doing workout. And what I found out is that you have to do it every day. I mean, every day you have to do some type of exercise. I do cardio, I work out, I lift weights. Lifting weights is critical to your aging gracefully. To be able to stand up, I can put on a double pair of tanks right now and go diving. I mean, I can do, there's not very little I can't do in life still. And so, and the other thing is, diet. I eat well. Now, I'm not one of those guys that's afraid of vegetables. I'm not afraid like asparagus is going to jump off the plate and attack me, or that I have to worry that it has chemicals in it that will, I eat vegetables too. I mean, it's just a well-balanced life, but you got to do something every day. And then last but not least, you got to be interested in life. Bitcoin's given me a new lease on life, a new purpose, a new hope. Imagine you and I were sitting here right now. We're both just sitting here having a good time. But when we step out of this studio, Robert, what would it be like if there was no Bitcoin? What would it be like if you and I were trapped in that world out there and we're both running around on the hamster wheel? We got all of our families working, the wives. My daughter one time, one of them, we've got a lot of kids. One of them had 3 jobs once. There are people that would farm out their kids to work if they had to right now. They're in such bad shape. And I don't want that world. And, Bitcoin's the escape.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the lifting weights, another thing that's really important, a lot of people don't know about that, is it's the number one way to prevent cognitive decline.
Oh.
It's like better than anything, better than reading, studying, brain games, whatever. You would intuitively think it would be something cognitive, some type of cognitive exercise, but it's actually the resistance training that studies show prevent the cognitive decline over time. So it's equally important for your physical health, but also your psychic health.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that, but for me, cognitively, I feel really good.
Yeah. So you're still doing basically daily cardio or resistance training even today?
Every day.
Amazing.
Yesterday, when I'm done here this afternoon, I'm going to go hit the gym.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, it's very encouraging to me to see Bitcoiners trending that direction, like people that really get into the Bitcoin rabbit hole and start to change their lives. They start to become more physically active. And so I think it's good to get pointers from a guy like yourself that's already run that race to some extent.
Yeah.
You've been running it your whole life.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to live in an off-grid community with complete food, energy, and water independence? If so, then you need to check out the farm at Okefenokee. The farm is a pioneering community designed to foster longevity and well-being, eliminating elements that detract from these goals. At the farm, the convergence of nature, nutritious food, a supportive community, and the ethos of slowing down is unparalleled. Positioned at the gateway to the UNESCO World Heritage-nominated Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, the farm at Okefenokee stands as a testament to a lifestyle that truly nurtures health and happiness. Unlike conventional housing developments where a token communal garden may suffice, the farm itself is the community. Small, intimate micro-villages seamlessly integrate into the fabric of a sprawling agricultural community. So if you're interested in joining this off-grid community, then go to okefarm.com today to learn more about becoming a member. Make sure to tell them that I sent you for a $21,000 discount on their custom cabin pricing. Again, go to okefarm.com to learn more about joining this revolutionary regenerative agriculture community. iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. Now we're going to go into the path of the artist here, which has been more of your recent life, the most recent phase of your very storied career trajectory so far. I just wanted to share, this was just a coincidence that I'm reading this book. I read this very compelling passage about the artist just last night. And so the fact that we're talking about this now, I thought I would share it with you. This is from a book titled Eternal Echoes. There's a subtitle, but I can't see it here on my Kindle. And so this is the passage, which is titled, The Artist as a Permanent Pilgrim. For most roles in life, there are structures of study and apprenticeship to acquire the skill to function, be it as a teacher, mechanic, or surgeon. Though certain structures exist for training in the arts, the artist is different. The artist trains himself. It can be no other way. Each artist is animated by a unique longing. There are no outer, ready-made maps for what the artist wants to create. Each is haunted by some inner voice that will not permit any contentment until what is demanded is created. The artist cannot settle into the consensus of normal belonging. His heart pushes him out to the edge where other imperatives hold sway. There is great lonesomeness in becoming implicated in the creation of something original. The French poet Arthur Rimbaud said, quote, "I have no ancestors," unquote. In a sense, the artist is called not so much from outside as from the unknown depths within.
Wow.
So I just thought that was beautiful. Like
that is a powerful, it's a powerful passage.
I think the author of this book is John O'Donohue, but I will have to check that later. But it's a really good book. He's like a Celtic philosopher, basically, and interesting. So anyways, kind of synchronicity. Here you are. I don't talk to artists every day. I talk to artists occasionally. But I just read that last night. So like, let's talk about your path into becoming an artist. Like, what is it, as he said, there's something within you that had to express itself? Like, where is the source of the artistry for you or from you?
You know, one of the things that I have discovered is that I screw up. I screw up a lot of stuff in life, but with my art, I am a master of what I do. And I'm not saying that with any bragging whatsoever, but I operate at a master's level. And that means, I have read about how to prepare canvases. I used to do them with rabbit skin glue and white lead, just like Michelangelo did in his studio. And I know all about my pigments and how to create paintings. The work that I have, if people just type my name into Google, I'm the first thing that comes up and they'll see the work. And it'll be here for hundreds of years. But the passage that you're reading there is someone who's trying to operate at a really high level of art. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm not. And more often than not, I think that I get to that point. And what I'm talking about here, to try and put it in just plain terms, is this. You're trying to create something that you think will last beyond yourself through time. You want something out there so that, did you know most possessions that people have don't make it past the third generation? Like if you have a collection, maybe you like beer cups or something, and you got a beer cup collection there, it won't get past the third generation. Doesn't matter, most of the photos that you have, paintings are different only if they are something that is a work of art. I've created some work that, I know that 4 generations, 5 generations, people that have no tie to me and don't know anything about who I was, they'll look at it and they'll go, boy, that's beautiful, or it's haunting. And then the last thing I'll say is that I just went through a really difficult period once in my life, and it changed me forever. And it was like before the full-time art job, so to speak, or profession. And it somehow allowed me to see a deeper vision in life. And you never know what's going to happen to you. It was maybe it's an accident. Maybe you slip on a banana peel or something. You don't know what's going to happen to you that changes your life. And then it can either be a positive or negative thing, and it's just often how you internalize it. I'm sure that's happened to you in the past.
Oh, yeah. We've all been through our adversities.
Yeah. And
I've heard it put that the origin story of the hero and the villain is always the same. I
love that.
They just channel it 2 different ways.
F. Scott Fitzgerald said, show me a hero and I'll write you a tragedy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So is it something like that has always, like what I'm struck by in this passage is like the unknown depths within. So it's almost like you have this calling on your life or something inside you that you must express into the world. Is that the feeling of the art? Because like I'm trying to connect, like there's certain ideas that I've had where I'm like, oh, I have to do this thing. Like it just possesses you. And you're like, it's not, I'm not an artist. I'm not a painter, but like, I write or I create certain types of content. That's a form of art, I guess. But
It is.
sometimes the idea, and it's always the best ideas, you don't even come up with them. Like I swear the best things that I've ever put out, I didn't come up with it. It grabbed me somehow. I don't even know where it came from. People so the number 0 in Bitcoin, which is my most popular written piece. I don't know where that came from. I don't know where I was looking for an example. I was actively engaged in the pursuit, but I don't know how I found it. I feel like it found me. And so I don't know. How has that been for you?
I'm really glad you're taking this tack with this, because I don't want to talk about my art so much as what I want to talk about what you just said, because that is the key. People out there that are listening to this, or if you're watching this thing, you know what? You can be an artist. Every one of us has that. Not every one of us. Most people have an urge somehow to create something. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Writing is an art form. Painting is an art form, but you know what? There are so many different ways to express yourself, whether it's pottery, wood making. I met a plumber one time that was an artist. I swear to God, I watched him work, and he was a craftsman. He had spent 20 years learning his craft, and you could tell the way he worked and the patience that he took it seriously. Mm-hmm. I watched him bend copper tubing down there, then sweat those joints, and they all matched. Everything fit perfect. And I looked at him, and if something wasn't right, he was an artist at his craft. Artist, it doesn't have to be something that seems unattainable. And again, if you're stacking Bitcoin and you understand where we're going with this thing, you're going to have all the opportunity that you're going to need in the future to be free to create. So you should think about that. Maybe it's a musical instrument. Music's one of the oldest art forms we have. And so I just want people to understand that there's nothing special about it, as much as you just need to have the time and freedom to be able to explore yourself. And some people are going to take up writing and they go, I suck at this. I don't like doing it.
Yeah, sure.
And who knows what they'll end up doing. Maybe they'll coding. I don't know. But you can be an artist at so many different things.
So what is it that delineates between, let's say, artwork, where someone has just created something, right? Whatever. There's a lot of things that could fall into that category, and what you called a minute ago a work of art, something that will be passed on beyond 3 generations, let's say, something that becomes timeless.
Yeah.
What is the difference? Like, where is it a spiritual thing? Like, how are you imbuing the artwork itself with something that makes it stand the test of time?
I don't know how to answer that, other than to say, do you think that there's certain music you've listened to in the past that in 100 years it'll still be listened to?
Of course.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to some of the music that's already more than 100 years old.
I was just listening to some old tunes with my cab driver coming over here.
Oh.
So what imbues that? What makes that special?
I have no idea.
I can't answer it either. I just know that some things resonate with us as human beings, and they stay with us.
Where does it come from, though? Like you mentioned pain earlier. It does seem like a lot of really profound art is born from tremendous suffering or pain.
Yeah, that period in my life, that did change my art. I started producing a lot of work that was kind of like haunting and maybe melancholy. And the galleries have mentioned it in the past. Often it's a woman walking away. But it's so tough to, and I'm not able to discuss that period in my life, but I can just say that, I'll tell you how I can phrase this. If you're out there right now and you're listening to this, you're driving around, who knows what the hell you're doing, just know that if you're struggling now or in the future, like when Bitcoin crashes, if you're struggling and really having a tough time in life, just know that sometimes all you have to do is get through it. You just got to get through it. Mm-hmm. In that period of my life, I was down to a point where I had to get through like 5-minute blocks. Mm-hmm. I'd just say, okay, you got to get through this next 5 minutes, buddy.
Wow.
And then, an hour. And then sometimes I'd go, well, I just need to get through this afternoon, man. I got to get through this afternoon. And then eventually it turned into days. And so if you're struggling right now, good things can come from that too. In a biblical sense, it's like sitting in the ashes, if you're familiar with that term. You just got to be in the desert, sit in the ashes, and work your way through this. And there'll be people that come up to you and they'll try to do everything they can to help you, but sometimes that doesn't help.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to sit there in the ashes.
Well said. I was just reminded, I don't even know, I'm just going to paraphrase this quote. I don't know who it's from, but it said something to the effect that like there are times in your life where you are embroiled in a heartbreak or depression or sad, whatever the thing is, right? Something bad's happened and you're sitting in the ashes, so to speak. And you might feel like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone ever, right? Like you think this is the worst. I'm at rock bottom. Like things could not get any worse. No one has ever endured this kind of suffering. You know, you can really get into that sort of almost solipsistic kind of mindset where it's like just you suffering and maybe even thinking the world's against you, like all the bad, negative thoughts that are associated with acute traumatic events. You know, whether it's traumatic or not, I don't know. I guess it could be argued. It could be a breakup, right? It could be something that's not that traumatic, so to speak, but could affect you a lot. And that the quote basically says that, but it says, but then we read. And when we read, we discover, like we get into other people's minds and other people's hearts and other places and other times that have endured very similar, you know, not the same. Obviously, every situation's unique, but people have been through a lot. People have been enduring a lot for a long time in a lot of different ways. And there's, you know, maybe it's like the misery loves company sort of adage, but there's some solace in that, I feel like if you are, you know, getting crushed by a heartbreak or a business failure or whatever, you know, physical, whatever the thing is that is really you've internalized and interpreted as traumatic, it does seem useful when you start to read about other people's experiences going through something similar, right? That they endured it, they survived it, they lived to tell the tale.
I agree. And, you know, I would throw that out as also good advice for people that are struggling with Bitcoin at times in the cycles, because you and I have been on the roller coaster. You know, I'm going to tell you something, and it's tough. So we seek each other out. And one of the reasons is we're trying to help each other, and we're trying to bolster each other in times of difficult times. You know, one of the best purchases you can make with Bitcoin is when you feel like when you're done hitting the smash buy button, you feel like you're going to throw up. Those are usually the best times. And I'll tell you something, you know, those times, they don't come around that often. You know, back in 22, well, I'll tell you what, I know how to frame this in just couple it exactly what you're talking about. So you were there with me. You remember what it was like in 22 as it kept going down and down and down. And, you know, I will tell people I have all my wealth in Bitcoin, okay? You know, Bitcoin's the royal flush. Once you understand that, you just put all your chips in. Now, I do have one proxy. I have one proxy, and that is MicroStrategy. And it's been fun. I've had a blast playing with it, but it's not Bitcoin. If it came between the two of them, I'm sorry, Sailor, I'd dump your shit out of the stock portfolio in a heartbeat. I hold Bitcoin. But the thing is, you know, I was smash buying in that last cycle also. You know, I was buying once in a while, and then I kept buying going down. And I remember a particular time, it was when it was, I don't know if you remember this. Remember, it was bouncing just below 20,000 for a long time. Just seemed like it would be there forever. And I lost kind of faith. I mean, I remember thinking to myself, and I was having trouble with my kids too. We have a lot of kids, and some of them were not on board with this program. They were having like, what's wrong with dad conversations, you know, is he lost his mind?
That can affect you a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
And so I remember, in particular, I was laying next to my the love of my life. You know, that nurse that I was dating when I built that chopper, you know, I used to stick her on the back of that fender. It was a hardtail. And just like a biker bitch, man, she'd just hang on. We'd go soaring through the roads, making a lot of noise. My bike was so loud that when I kickstarted one time, it caused the baby to start crying. And I thought, this thing is pretty badass. But, you know, she's always had faith in me. She's told me I am the king. She's said that. You are the king of this castle. You are the master of the house. And she said it in front of the kids, and they just roll their eyes. They hate that, you know. And if anybody's listening to this and you're getting the wrong impression about my wife, I'm going to tell you something. She's smarter than I am. She's a professional, master's degree. She treats people, patients, and at a very high level of skill set. So she's not stupid. But she was there peacefully just sleeping. And I remember looking and I'm thinking, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? I'm staring at the ceiling and I'm going, you know, if I fuck this up, you know, this woman, she trusts me. And you know, when somebody says that to you, they say, you know, you're the king of this house. I trust you. That means everything. And I mean, it's responsibility. It settles on your shoulders. It's like, you know what? I better not screw this up. She's counting on me. I mean, in everything. I'm not just talking about like, you know, fooling around or cheating or something. I'm talking about everything. Your finances, how you run the house. You know, you got to be making sure. And I treat her like she's my queen. But what I'm trying to get to, and I will, is that I was really in a bad place mentally. I'm just laying there. And this happened for quite a while because remember, it was bouncing for a long time. So you know what I did? It's just what you said. I just stuck my nose in the books and I started reading. I started reading and watching podcasts like this, like the old series of everything that you can imagine. I watched them all. You know, Antonopoulos, by the way, if you ever hear this, thank you. Thanks for everything you did. You know, just all these people. And I kept studying. And what happened? It dropped. It went to 17,000. And I bought like a drunken sailor. And you know what? That was a turning point, and it was just from studying, and it was from having other people in this space who helped me get through that period. So that's what we should think about here, that, you know, if you're struggling, again, just get in the books, read, understand what you hold. You know, you're sitting on a three-legged stool. And don't look down at your balls right now. Just think it to yourself, this is a three-legged stool I'm sitting on, and I've only got three things to do. I just have to buy Bitcoin. I got to stack Bitcoin like a psychopath, smart psychopath, and then I just have to not lose it. I just have to hold on to the damn thing, and you're set.
Well, that's a great story and good advice. It sounds like you were having that heavy as the head that wears the crown experience, you know?
Sort of Damocles.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've got a good partnership or marriage there as well, that, you know, that is the role of the queen. I really like the metaphor that the man is the head of the household and the woman is the neck.
A lot of people aren't going to like that. And you know what? I don't really know.
No, it is what it is. It is what we are evolutionarily adapted to be, right? Like men are these exploratory, idea-obsessed creatures, right? That we go and figure things out. And it's also been said that men test ideas and women test men. And then women,
I haven't heard that.
And women, there's such, you know, they're, and people are going to hate it when I say this, but they're less rational than men.
Oh, you know what, Robert? You're going down a road here.
However, social reality and like there is an irrational element to being human that's very important, right? As is said, all is fair in love and war, right? That means there's a big irrational component to it. So women are extremely important in managing the balance of the kingdom, so to speak. But I think you can only have that balance when you respect those roles, right? That you let the man be the king and you let the woman be the queen.
Yeah, but
and ultimately the man decides, but the man is assimilating a lot of feedback from his queen.
Yeah, that's the point, is you're right. See, it's mutually respectful. And to any young Bitcoiner out there, I just read recently that like 45% of Bitcoiners have not been in a romantic involvement. You know, get off your ass here. We need a bunch of little Bitcoiners around. And so you know, the thing is, yeah, you have a responsibility and to, you know, that respect. And, you know, I have tremendous respect for the love of my life. And I've earned that and she's earned it from me. And it's mutually balanced. You know, what you're looking for in life is you want to have somebody that loves you more than they love themselves. And that applies to the two of us. Yeah. And my kids may roll their eyes and they may think that something's wrong with dad. I mean, they think as the years have gone by, I got stupider and stupider. But eventually, you know, I'm telling you right now, they're going to see at some point in life that maybe I do know what I'm doing when it comes to Bitcoin anyway.
As a fellow Bitcoiner, I think your children's opinion of you will increase with a Bitcoin price. So probably by the end of 2025, they're going to think you're a genius. But yeah, no, thank you for saying that, because that is such an important, in my opinion, it's the only way that a family can work, right? Is that we respect, it's just like an economy. It's a division of labor, ultimately. It's like the man's going to do the things that the man is better at. The woman will do the things that the woman is better at, and then we complement one another, right? It's just like we specialize in an economy, right? You know, you make hats better than I make shoes, and we trade and we both benefit. That division of labor is natural, both at scale, at macro scale and micro scale. And so really learning, and this is where you get into like disagreement with your significant other, you need to learn how to disagree well and respectfully, right? And say, hey, you have blind spots about this. and also be willing to accept when you have blind spots about something, and establish these protocols, practices, techniques for having effective disagreement, because life is a whole lot of disagreement over and over and over again, constantly trying to get on the same page about stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't, obviously I can't even relate to having adult children and having their opinions thrown in the mix. Like, I don't even know what that's like yet, but I'm sure it's much the same, right? You need to learn how to disagree with them well as well.
Yeah. And they have their own lives and they're doing good, except, like I said, I hate to see, I just hate to see what this world, this fiat world has done to, ourselves and our society, or, this dollar-based fiat world. Do you know the first word that God ever speaks is in the Bible is fiat?
Fiat lux.
Let there be, I decree light.
Yeah.
And, it's a shame what it's done to us, because, and I can show over the years, you can look back on history, you can look at the 19th century in particular, when the world was on both bimetallic or gold standard, one of the most productive times in human history. Think about what we developed then. We developed, telegraph, the wireless telegraph. We put a telegraph across the Atlantic Ocean, connected Europe and England here. We, built railroads all over the country, transcontinental railroad, battleships, Bessemer steel process. So we built skyscrapers, elevators. I mean, in medicine, x-rays, germ theory. First time we came up with antibiotics, dynamite. The list is endless. And it was all in a time when we had sound money. Yeah. And when people hear me say sound money, all I'm talking about is money that cannot be easily debased or printed. It's based on something, either in species, either receiving gold or silver or something, hard money. So
yeah, it's something that the free market chooses, and the free market chooses something that's hard to produce because that's good at preserving purchasing power over time. And that serves as a really firm foundation on which to have all these 0-to-1 innovations, to use the Peter Thiel terminology, right? Where nothing existed, you create something. And then there's the one-to-many innovations, which is like, telegraph. Creating the telegraph was the 0-to-1. And then creating the telephone, the internet, all the things that are subsequent to that are the one-to-many, basically. They're improvements on the idea of telecommunications, but the original 0-to-1 was the telegraph, basically. And so, yeah, it's easy. Like, I think this makes the Bitcoin narrative a little bit tricky, because we say, hey, look, when you're not on a sound money foundation, you don't get a lot of technological innovation. And people are like, what are you talking about? We've got internet and AI and blah, 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 like all this stuff. But it's like, those aren't fundamental. I mean, I guess AI, you could argue, is perhaps a fundamental change. I'm not well-versed enough to say whether that's an extension of databases or not. Anyways, we don't tend to see a lot of these 0-to-1 innovations in the fiat period. And this is all beautifully outlined in Saftein's book, The Bitcoin Standard, right? But in La Belle Epoque, or the Gilded Age, we saw a lot of these 0-to-1 innovations. We saw a lot of cultural flourishing. We saw a lot of art, right? A lot of really high quality art produced.
Tremendous architecture too.
Yeah.
And the thing is also to think about is the fact that those periods of time that I'm talking about were not inflationary. If you look at the history of the inflation over that period, you'll see that it spikes for two periods in that 19th century, 1812, War of 1812, and then the Civil War. And of course, why?
For war.
They had to, war. The thing is, and if you look at the history of our country, paper money will always return to its intrinsic value, zero.
Yeah.
And Voltaire said that. Yeah. And you know that the founding fathers of this country were fans of Voltaire and had. Oh yeah. I know Benjamin Franklin met him. Thomas Jefferson was, a huge fan of his, and they were afraid of these fiat currencies because they had seen what happened. What they needed to fight a war. So what did they do? They printed money.
Of course.
And the Continental was worthless. And so they had experience with this, but nonetheless, Hamilton pushed through the first central bank of this country in 1791. And then it lasted for 11 years, and it was Jefferson and Madison, and said, we've had enough of this. But the thing is, the next year, after they got rid of it, what happened? The War of 1812. And so they're going, we need a lot of money. And they started printing again. But what I'm trying to say is, if you look at the money after that, it deflates. It goes down and down and down. And we're producing all these things in our world. I mean, we are so productive with deflationary money. And if you look at George Selgin's work studying Scotland and free banking, which we had in that period, it was stable, non-inflationary, less crisis management. It didn't go from guardrail to guardrail like the Fed.
Right. No systemic risk, really, right? Because it's very decentralized.
For 100 years.
Yeah.
And so it worked.
Yeah.
So, you know, these people that somehow, these Keynesians that think we need to have some kind of an inflationary component to our money, I mean, they're just flat ass wrong.
Yeah.
And my kids and everybody, you know, we're all paying the price for this world we live in. And we're consuming shit at an incredible rate. We need like 6 planets to fuel the future on inflation.
Yeah. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLF, I've heard this quote before, it's coming to mind now. The job of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And so this idea of using art as like a medium of expression for speaking truth to power, right? That we oftentimes can't even say, you know, you can't tell the emperor he has no clothes, perhaps, but you can say it artistically, right? In sort of an indirect, roundabout way. What is the role? Like, obviously, Bitcoin is this huge affront to all centralized power structures, maybe the biggest affront there's ever been, right? It's like, it obliterates the centralization of money, which is crazy to think about. What is the role of art in furthering and amplifying the Bitcoin message and ethos?
You know where I would take that conversation is I'd take it right to the memes. Because I'm telling you right now, memes are a powerful expression.
It's a new language.
It is. Yeah. And you know, if art is a language, memes are a language too. And I'd have to say that some of the best fortitude that's ever been infused in me has come from great memes. And what's so terrific about a meme is I find that I think of them as an art form, good ones, and I think of them as having some inherent truth that I suspect is true, but amplifies the veracity. So I look at it and go, oh, I was right about that, and this is why. And it doesn't mean if it's Lynn Alden's "Nothing Stops This Train." I've got my own meme, by the way. It's "Nothing Stops This Plane," and what it means is basically, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you're on the carrier and you get ready to launch, you salute. You salute the shooter, the guy sitting there, and he does that move, and he gets down, puts his hand down. Nothing's going to stop anything that's going to happen next. Okay, you might as well just put your head back, relaxed. Understand what you hold if it's Bitcoin, and understand that you're not going to stop this train, and nothing is. you will go off. You can stick your feet on the brakes of that jet. And if you're going to be shot off at 145 miles an hour, you know what? You can put full brakes on and you're going to go off at 145 miles an hour with flat tires because nothing is going to stop it. And when you see some of these, I call them artists, like, there's a particular artist I really like, does memes, Roman Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
And, or there's so many of them. They're just great. And I think I think it's an art form, and I think it does speak to power. It speaks to a thought and idea.
Yeah. You know what's amazing about the new language that is memes is that they can take all of this emotional salience we have with some, like a film, right? Like a scene in a film, which is often what these memes are, right? It'll be a clip of a scene in a film. And then you overlay some other text on it, right? That's relevant to the message you're trying to, and then you kind of piggyback on the emotional salience of that scene in the film. Like people have seen that movie and they felt a certain way, but then you piggyback your message on top of it. So it like causes it to carry it's a very interesting, like artistic. It's an amalgam, right? You're combining these different artistic mediums and it causes it to go further and faster even. So I'm fascinated by that as like an emergent language.
And it is, like I said, it's both a form of protest, which art often is, but it's also a form of expression to just signify to others, you're not alone. We feel this. We see this same message, and it just reinforces itself.
Yeah. So there's another way, like if language is a messaging system that we use to connect our minds, this is another form of that, but it's a bit stronger on the emotional salient side rather than just like the pure rational informational side.
Probably true. I mean, yeah, it's probably applying more to emotions.
Yeah.
And, again, just, for me, tying it back into, for me, Bitcoin, Bitcoin's an emotional journey. We've already discussed that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that once you go down that rabbit hole, you don't stop. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. There's no end to the rabbit hole.
There's no exit either.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. You just get in it. And, you're in the rabbit hole. That's where you're going to spend the time.
Yeah.
And you might as well just enjoy it down there. And you might as well just, like I said, study your ass off, never stop. And, it will keep you young and active. There's no end to what you can learn about. I've been studying strategy, just came up with a new convertible bond yesterday. So I've been studying that, looking at the market, how it fits in, what their game plan is, their goal in the future, and which I actually think I've known for some time. And, which is a fascinating story too. We're going to see this. This is the most amazing year. I don't know if you're paying attention. I don't know how people can sleep at night right now because there's so many exciting things coming down the road, and they've already happened. And since the election, I'd have to say I've totally revamped my thought of the future as far as where things are going, and it's going to be a fascinating journey. This next year, we're going to see one of the major things that's going to come down the road is Sob 122, which repealed the former law. Banking is going to come in here massively. I mean, we are going to see so many entrants, and that's going to bring a whole new set of problems and things that people are going to have to address. But it's coming.
Yeah, no, it is. For me, it feels like for some reason, not that exciting, actually.
Really?
No, because we've been saying this is going to happen for years. Like it's been 9 years almost at this point. And Bitcoiners have been saying this is the path that's going to follow, right? Like you will see mainstream adoption. You'll see more traditional finance integrating into Bitcoin, it causing legalized reforms, all these things. Like we've just been, so now that I see it happening, I'm just like, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. Like,
I've heard that from other Bitcoiners too. I've heard some people talking lately that when we crossed 100,000, it basically was like a non-event for them because, and another time where I was wrong is I did think the last cycle that we'd see 100,000.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure though that, both the mining ban, the GBTC premium turning to negative, and the fact that I was not aware of how widespread choke point 2.0 was.
Right.
I think that shut that rally down pretty early. But I mean, just think about where we're sitting at now, Robert. I mean, in my mind, the stars are aligning for an incredible bull run. Even what we're seeing right now in price action, I just think this is such a bullish period. These sideways periods where we're building are so important to a long-term bull run. You know, from 73,000 up to 100,000, we sold, long-term holders were selling coins into the market every day. 40,000 coins a day at one time, over 1 million in that period. Now it's down to maybe 10,000, I think, long-term holders selling every day. That is so important because we are transferring that wealth into a new generation that's going to be here for this next bull run. As long as we sit down in here, and I just looked at charts yesterday to review the charts that I follow. There's 3 in particular I follow, and you know what? The market looks so healthy to me. I'm not saying it couldn't drop down to 73,000, but what I'm saying is the market itself looks very healthy, and I think this is going to be a groundbreaking year for what's coming.
Even that, like at some point, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like time in Bitcoin or depth of study or something, but you really do become desensitized to these movements. Even when you say that drop down to 73,000, like there's something in my head laughing. It's like, we're going to drop to 73. Okay, well then we're doing great because I don't know. Like I look at it as still like $1,000 asset in a way, right? Like, it's my own bias of when I got into it, I guess. It's like, oh, it's around $1,000 and now it's many multiples of that. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know. Like other people do report the desensitization. I don't know if it's like time in or depth of study, or maybe it's just your own personal financial position in it. I'm not sure. But
I think you touched on it right there. I think it's just the depth of study.
Yeah.
You know, volatility doesn't bother me now. I don't lie awake at night. You know, that doesn't bother me anymore. I'm not concerned about volatility at all. Bitcoin's not going to fail. You know, you can't say that all the time, but for me, after it was spring of 21 with China, the China ban, after that 6 weeks later, remember we were chopping right along there. Hash rate was back up. And I thought, you know what, this is a sign. This was one of the few things that I was concerned about. And, you know, for me, I've never gone back. Bitcoin's not going to fail. I'm not worried about that. I think that some things that are going to happen in the future might not be the way that some of us wanted. You know, this announcement down in El Salvador at Plan B by Tether, USDT, and Paulo Ordonez, you know, that's a big announcement. They're going to use the Taproot protocol. Used to be called Taro. They're going to move themselves onto the Bitcoin base layer and Lightning. And some people are going to be pissy about that. Some people are still pissy about the Bitcoin ETFs. And full disclosure, I want you to know, I mean, I hold Bitcoin in many buckets, and one of them are Bitcoin ETFs. And some people will say that's a shitcoin or wrapped Bitcoin. It is wrapped Bitcoin. I could care less. It's partly for security purposes too. I don't want to have Bitcoin. I don't keep a hardware wallet around anymore. So, you know, there's a lot of things going on, and I'll tell you, anybody that's pissy right now, if you're pissy about any of these things I'm talking about, you know what? You come up to me at one of these conferences or something. You tell me how we could have stopped Bitcoin ETFs coming into the space, or options,
so
or the CME futures, or Tether wanting to come back onto the Bitcoin base layer and Lightning. How are you going to stop that? These people are just, I mean, you're spitting in the wind. Bitcoin it's like I want to ask you something. Have you ever called Bitcoin a living organism?
Oh yeah. I mean, I forget was it Hal Finney himself described it as a digital organism. So yeah, I've referenced that a lot in my work, specifically the difficulty adjustment, how it adapts to our attempts to acquire it. It is a living thing. Like it adapts, right? It adapts to how hard we mine it. We mine it harder, it gets harder. We mine it less hard, it gets easier. It's a weird thing. It
is a weird thing. And, you know, if you and I were having a conversation with a normie right now, or if there were sending them out there that are listening, they're going to go, man, these guys, what are they on?
Right.
You know, and that's just iced tea I'm drinking there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is such a great conversation because I've always pictured it kind of almost like a living beast. You know, I've used that term apex predator. We like that because we're guys.
Sure.
You know, we like in our ideal world, you and I, we'd be back in Rome, and we'd have dinosaurs running around, and we'd have swords. That would be like you and I would have a blast there. I mean,
it sounds like a cool sci-fi movie.
I would love it. But the thing is, when I say that Bitcoin's like a living organism, I remember the first time I ever saw Bitcoin's price chart in log form. I was blown away. Maybe it's because I'm an artist. Visually, it just set me right down on my ass. I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I have never, in all my studying, and I was studying a lot, financial, macro, commodities, all kinds of things. I'd never seen anything like it. I looked at it and I thought, this thing's relentless. It's like math. It's like cyclical. And, you know, as I've come around to studying it more and more, there is something to that description. You know that conversation you had with Giovanni Santostasi on the power law? That is, without a doubt, that's the best podcast I've listened to of him. And
Thank you.
And well, I had no idea that you had a background where you could follow so well with him, with the math and the functions and the equations. And, you know, he's kind of a prickly bastard. In fact, I've told him, you know, he and I are friends I told him on X, I've said, look, you're your worst enemy. I mean, you're hurting yourself more than helping. But
yeah.
To all those people that follow me or some of my friends that push back against his model, I want you to know that going forward, as the years go by and you study it more and more, it's going to become more validated, I think. And the reason is because it's based upon almost living organisms. But
Yeah. Well,
that like
it applies to also to cities, to businesses, to living things. Yeah. So is this city alive? Well, sort of. It's like part
and
engineered, part organic.
Exactly. And
Bitcoin's the same. Internet's the same.
If you take that power law and you take Bitcoin and you take, say, maybe price, no, leave that out of it. If you take those two things and you look at how they grow, there's a common thread there, and that thread is networks. And a power law describes networks very well.
Yes.
And in fact, I'm going to dick up this guy's name. Darren Acemoglu in 2009 at MIT gave a lecture on power laws. He later won a Nobel Prize, not for this discussion, but and related them to networks and how the reason power laws exist is because of networks. And for anybody listening to this, if you're not familiar with it, here's a power law is attempting to look at past behavior and project something in the future that's going to happen very simply. And quite frankly, if it's accurate, it can do a very good job of predicting that.
So the one striking example might be useful here. And this is and we talked about this on that episode, Jeffrey West book Scale, where basically every living thing has the same number of heartbeats in its life, right? But the larger organism tends to have a longer life, which means its heartbeat is slower. I hope I'm doing this the right way. The smaller organism has a shorter lifespan, but its heartbeat is higher frequency. It's faster. But they have the same, like the mouse has the same number of heartbeats approximately on average as the elephant. And so you can chart basically all animals on this line, and they're on this power law line. So there is some fundamental relationship, right? It's a mathematical principle embedded in the biological, physical reality of the organism that spans across all known organisms, as an example.
And you know what? I remembered now the other thing I was going to say. So picture it as, you know, power law, Bitcoin, and viruses. Viruses display power law behavior. And one of the most common has been around for millennia, like 3,000 years ago, and that's influenza. You know, the flu epidemic. If you go in a graveyard right now, you can walk into any graveyard in this country and you start looking around and you're one of those weirdos that writes down dates on them and stuff. You'll notice there's one date in particular, one year that comes out in that graveyard, especially among the children's section, and that's 1918. And that's the flu epidemic of that period. But viruses display that. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin's a virus, but it displays virus-like behavior. And if you think about a virus, what does it look for? It looks for a host. And if you think of Bitcoin in that way, what would the host be? You know, what would be the ideal host for Bitcoin to be on? It would be the internet. It would the internet is spreading everywhere, and Bitcoin's with it. And we are embedding ourselves across this planet on that network. You know, there are 5.5 billion people right now with exposure to the internet, 4.5 billion people with a smartphone, and it's growing. And as it progresses, we are going to see Bitcoin spread into every nook and cranny where it can reach. And for those people who are laughing right now, you might even be a traditional investor that has, a stock portfolio. If you're doing any kind of portfolio investing based upon index funds, you have exposure probably right now to Bitcoin. You may not know it.
For sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What comes to mind there is Carl Jung's famous quote that people don't have ideas, ideas have people.
Oh.
We can't say that to call Bitcoin a virus might be too much, but to say it exhibits virality is not at all too far, right? Memes have virality, ideas have virality. Bitcoin is just an idea ultimately, right? It's like an idea that is somehow rooted into physical reality through the expenditure of energy. This is why, again, I analogize it to the number 0, because when you look at the power, Victor Hugo has this great quote that nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And when you see an idea introduced into an environment that's like, it's a highly useful idea, you can't stop it because it's just an idea. It's like, how are you going to stop information from flowing?
You can't kill ideas.
Right? As much as the state tries, right? They try to control media. They try to control money. They try to suppress dissenters with violence and coercion and fear and all the things. But that always just amplifies the message, right? It accelerates. It's like trying to squeeze something harder and it just slips between your fingers more quickly. Like the harder you squeeze, the more you drive its proliferation. And so this idea about ideas being unstoppable when their time has come is very interesting. And I think you'd be hard pressed to think of a better circumstance and context for Bitcoin to be released into, right? That we are in a global coordinated currency counterfeiting inflation. What better soil to plant the seed of uncounterfeitable money into? Like I can't even imagine a better situation.
Again, it's like, what would you do? How would your world be right now without some idea of a place to go where you can store your wealth?
Yeah.
Because what have we wanted to do as human species? We've been around for like 200,000 to 300,000 years. And you and I were talking a little while ago beforehand, and I said to you, if you and I were transported back and we were walking on the Nile River along the Fertile Crescent, and it's 200,000 years ago, we'd come across a man, he'd look just like us, or hopefully, if it wasn't a Neanderthal. But the thing is that at the time, we were hunter-gatherers. And you can look, as we discussed earlier, you can look at the bones of people that were in that population. Many times they exhibit really trauma that was similar to a rodeo rider would exhibit, that kind of break. It was rough combat. And they were doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. It's only in the last 10,000 years. It's since the Pleistocene Ice Age, 13,000 years. It's only 10,000 years that we have been farmers, we have concentrated our humanity together. More children, 2 to 3 more children than hunter-gatherers. So we could push them out or conquer them, assimilate them. We formed clans initially, now tribes, now tribal nations, now city-states. And all that time as we went into nation-states, empires, let's go back to the Roman Empire. What were they all looking for? It was always money. We were always trying to find money. And we used every fucking thing you can imagine. We used leather, we used, rice, we used everything you can imagine.
Salt.
The rye, the stones, everything possible. And where I'm from, they used corn because those settlers, they came over the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge Mountains, they came down in my valley there, and they could grow corn like mad. They grew all kinds of corn. But the thing is, when you get a lot of corn, it's hard to transport. Stick it in a wagon, it bounces all out. So what did they do? They concentrated it into a more dense form, liquid, transportable in a barrel, and they turned it into whiskey. So we've been doing everything we can. And finally, over the centuries, we ended up with a bimetallic standard. I mean, that won out. Eventually, gold was
which is, again, to your point, very high density.
Yeah, exactly.
The most purchasing power per unit volume was gold. That's why gold won out.
Yeah. And
now what do we have with Bitcoin? Purchasing power with 0 volume. It's infinite density, right? There's no volume. It's not physically there, but it can have unlimited purchasing power put into it. And that's why it's mind-blowing.
You only have, that is mind-blowing. You only have until 2034 when we go to the 99%, 1% left to mine. And you know what? That's basically right there. We're going to lose as much Bitcoin as we produce from then on. So it's basically done. That's it. And we've never had that before. This is, when I say revolutionary, and you've got to be excited, This is a once in a species event, and we've been searching for 10,000 years to get something to fill that role. And you know what? Gold did fill that. If you're a gold bug and you're listening there, I have nothing against gold bugs.
No,
Zero.
Gold's great.
Absolutely. And you know what? Gold bugs, if they're like you and me and they've gone down the road and they've studied, they know that gold is basically just
Analog Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. They're Bitcoiners and they don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
But they'll be here with us eventually.
Yeah, I've said the same thing. I said, if you understand why gold became money, then you will sell all of your gold and buy Bitcoin, basically. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware's mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few strokes of the keyboard. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your miner's energy bill for the first week of each of your mining rigs when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-sig vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which that have unilateral control over your assets. More than just security, OnRamp simplifies inheritance and estate planning, ensuring your Bitcoin wealth moves seamlessly to your loved ones without the risk and complexities of self-custody. Easily designate beneficiaries right in the OnRamp dashboard, eliminating the need for unreliable treasure maps or other complex key-sharing schemes. You can also avoid the probate process and ensure your heirs receive their Bitcoin securely with legal title transfers designed to keep your wealth intact for generations. As Bitcoin continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly access financial services, from inheritance and insurance to trading, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security. And importantly, the onboarding process is fast and frictionless. I set up my own OnRamp account, and it was far easier than dealing with hardware wallets or traditional self-custody setups. The team walked me through everything step by step, making sure I had a secure, reliant setup for my Bitcoin wealth. Secure your generational wealth with confidence. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team today at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. I do carve out this little, as I've deepened in my own Bitcoin journey, I've carved out a place for physical gold because the world's uncertain, right? There is a possible future where we have no electricity, internet, or AI. And in that dystopian future, gold will be dominant. So I've actually carved out a portion of my, you know what, I do want to hold some physical gold just in case, because you never know. Obviously, I assign a lower probability to that than I do the digital age, which I'm more optimistic for, but you never know. So you got to hedge your bets, so to speak. I want to try to tie some of these things together.
Good.
Because you made a great point that, you know, humans stood upright something like 2 million years ago, right? Homo erectus. But only in the past 10,000 years, so 0.5% of that time, have we been agrarians, right? Have we been farmers, basically?
Right.
Forward. And so, and that also, that time period, the genesis of agriculture, the agricultural age, is also the time that government became an institution, because once we created the economic surplus, right, the grains in the silo, so to speak, we needed to create a protection. We had to protect it. We need physical protection for the economic surplus that we're creating through agriculture. That is the genesis of government and the state. And so it seems like ever since then, we've been in this weird, there's a book called The Lessons of History, I think is the name of the book. They describe centralization and decentralization as like the heartbeat of human history. That we had this tendency where things will centralize until they get too painful for a while. Then we'll have revolutions and things will decentralize. And then eventually they start to centralize again. And that's the pattern we're stuck in, where it's like government, the state as this centralized institution has accumulated a lot of power over time, but eventually people start to throw off the yoke of the state and we get more individual liberty again. And so we've been trapped in this like individualist versus collectivist oscillation, basically. And we haven't really been able to get out of it, right? We've improved it. We've gone from, I always say we've gone from ancient pharaoh god kings to the constitutional republic that the United States was founded as, right? So we've decentralized power further, but we've still had, we're in one right now, right? Like the United States was very decentralized in its origins, and now it's become much more centralized, and we're dealing with that whole, we're even perhaps having a small decentralization of that now, right? With the Doge and all these things cutting government costs. Like, who knows if that's legit? I don't know. But the point is, we've been trapped in this thing. And so the battle has always been to control the narrative, right? You want to control people's minds or give them the narrative that says, hey, this is good for you. Whether it's, if you're a statist, it's centralization that's good for you, Mm-hmm. From each according to their ability to each according to their need. Nobody's safe until everybody's safe. All these crazy narratives that they're pushing on people to get them to buy in and subscribe to the centralized power philosophy. And then there's also this push to decentralize, right? Largely from the libertarian philosophers and whatnot. So to try and take this back to art, sorry, this is long-winded, but art has been such an important part of that, right? When you're trying to win the hearts and minds of men, whether either you're in the centralized camp or the decentralized camp, you're always trying to win people over. And art is probably the most powerful medium for doing that, right? It can be very, as we said with memes earlier, you get this emotional salience, this very like visceral response to it. It can do something that words alone can't do. A picture's worth 1,000 words, as has been said. So now I would call that centralized use of artwork to try to get people in the centralized camp, I would call that propaganda.
Agree.
And I would call the artwork that's used to get people to realize that they are actually, made in the image of an eternal creator, and they are responsible for themselves, and they are divine, and they have this power of creation in them and rational thinking. They're highly programmable. They can become whatever they want, that sort of thing. I would call that art.
I agree.
So how do we...
Well said.
How do we wrestle with this spectrum of art versus propaganda? And how do we know that the art we like is not propaganda? And how do we know that how do we know when we're looking at propaganda, basically?
Everything the government says is a lie.
Everything it has is stolen.
Everything it has stolen.
Yes.
That could be a framework, Nietzsche, that if you wanted to.
Yes.
But let's just say that that rests on you. That rests on your shoulders. That's you. Mm-hmm. It's got to be. You have to. That has to be your responsibility. And if there's one thing that being involved in this particular space, the Bitcoin space, has taught me, is to think at a different level. Mm-hmm. My thinking has changed dramatically.
Same, for sure.
Exactly. Who does it touch that it does not change that? If somebody tells you something, what's the very first thing you're probably thinking? You're going to question it. Mm-hmm. I do. Mm-hmm. And if the government tells me something now in today's world, how do you think I view that? One of the greatest uses of art as propaganda was the Nazi regime in World War II. And none of that work is relevant today.
Right. It doesn't stand the test of time.
Just like you said.
Yeah.
And that is the key. And, it's our responsibility. You nailed it when you discussed, that agrarian society and where we came from and how that transpired. Governments are now here. Violence is here. Soldiers are here because of that initial need that we had to protect ourselves. Once we began to accumulate wealth, we wanted to store it. You can go back to Mesopotamia, think modern, in the area of Iraq, Iran, and they can find clay-lined pits where they tried to store their wealth, grain at the time. And once you start store wealth, then you have to protect wealth. And the average citizen, instead of constant combat, eventually ended up using sheriffs, if you will, guys standing around with some kind of a weapon and to protect themselves. But it's very easy for that weapon to turn on you. You know, look at Julius Caesar when he turned on the Republic, when he crossed the Rubicon and said, the die is cast, created an empire with him as the dictator.
Right.
You know, power tends to coalesce around power.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And, you know, I don't know if that oscillation maybe has been necessary to drive because on the longest arc, we've been decentralizing, right? Like, obviously, from Pharaoh God Kings to Constitutional Republic, that's a big step towards decentralization. But in between, it's like,
yes.
And I don't know. I mean, the aspiration would be that we could maybe stop doing that at some point and just be like, let's actually just be as decentralized as possible, because that does create the best results.
Well, let me ask you something then. You know, we throw around this term all the time, Bitcoin fixes that. And, you know, I don't think Bitcoin fixes diseases, although I do think that it could fix some of the things that are going around disease management right now.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is, when we say that term, Bitcoin fixes this, in my mind, what we're really saying is that we know that this experiment that we're doing right now with fiat is not going to work.
Yeah.
No matter, it's not God that said fiat dollars, and it doesn't matter who said it. I don't feel like this experiment's working. Now, I can tell you this can go for a long time. World reserve currencies, they last a long time. You look at Florence and the florin, the ducat with Venice, those lasted a couple hundred years until Napoleon came in and sacked them in Venice and stole their beautiful horses, which are back, by the way. They're, you know, obviously they've been back since Waterloo. But you can look at all of these empires, the Spanish Empire, you know, the Portuguese, the British pound, the pound sterling, all of these empires, their currencies lasted a long time. The U.S. currency could last a lot longer. I'm not saying that it's going to go away, but when I say that, you know, Bitcoin is hope for me, I see a world where we can move away from that fiat-driven world and find sound money. And I hope that sound money can fix some of these things that you're discussing right now. So what is your take on that statement, you know, Bitcoin fixes this? Do you think that we're going to go forward where we can actually fix our world that we live in, just our world right here?
Yeah. Well, it's a very, very important question, and a very big question, because it is sort of the central mantra of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin fixes this, or fix the money, fix the world is a variation of that. If I was going to attempt to interpret that, it would be something like human ingenuity fixes this. You know, like any problem that we need to solve, well, we have to solve it.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can, you know, serendipitously discover things. Like you brought up antibiotics earlier, right? Like wasn't penicillin an accidental discovery? Like we've had a lot of accidental discoveries, but it doesn't just like fall out of the sky and hit you on the head. I mean, I guess Newton's apple did, but he still had to like go through all this interpretation and, you know, lay out this elaborate mathematical schematic for us to understand the movements of the celestial bodies. And I guess what I'm trying to say is like, we have to solve all the problems that we identify. We have to solve them. Like the buck stops with us essentially. And I think having corrupt money is something that impedes human ingenuity, right? If you think about all the bullshit, non-productive cognitive labor we expend on, I don't know, being tax attorneys or writing tax code or fighting over, you know, the military industrial complex. doesn't get much more wasteful than that, right? You're literally
Doesn't. Yeah, I'm literally the poster child.
The most expensive activity that humans can possibly engage in, and it produces exactly nothing. It actually is counterproductive. It's destructive. So all of these things that we're doing are counterproductive to our progress as a species, right? They are impeding human ingenuity's ability to go out and solve problems, at least in the aggregate, right? And look, the devil's all in the details. People might be like, oh, what do you mean? You know, it was in wartime when penicillin was discovered. It's in wartime when some of these innovations do get expanded and compounded upon. And like, sure, there's some of that there. But do we have to really go to war with each other and murder each other at scale just to get inventions? Or can we actually do it in a non-violent, productive way, right? And we actually coordinate our efforts with very tight feedback loops across the largest spans of time. Like, I feel like that would probably get us even better results than whatever we've seen from wartime. So my rough interpretation would be, when you say Bitcoin fixes this or fix the money, fix the world, you're talking about fixing, it's the problem that is most identifiable and furthest upstream from so many other problems, right? We recently had Joe Bryan here that did that video, What's the Problem? Right? And he has a beautiful flow chart, like, opiate addiction, obesity, endless wars, fake news, 20 different bubbles. And he's connecting them all back to the corruption of money. So the corruption of money is the source waters from which all these other problems flow. And so if we can take human ingenuity to just go and address this thing upstream, we get all these downstream benefits. And then we've unlocked human ingenuity to go and solve all these other problems.
It frees us up from that hamster wheel.
Yes.
So that we can just take a step back and relax. You know, my life is so relaxed.
Yeah.
You know, and anybody listening or watching, your life is going to be the same way. All you have to do is be patient. Your life will end up being in the same boat as I am right now, where you can step back and just enjoy your life, enjoy the people you're around, enjoy your family. You know, you're talking about this endless fiat nightmare that we're in. It's like, I just want a washing machine that lasts 7 years, you know? I want us to stop dropping bombs on people that I didn't vote for. Right. I'm sick of that.
Amen.
I don't want to. I'm tired of this misaligned objectives to what my moral and ethical concerns are. I want sound money. I want us to fix this money. 1971, going off the gold standard or closing the gold repatriation window, that was a big deal. Yeah. Things have changed since then. It's not been the same world, and I can prove it. All you have to do is look on some charts. I can show you in any chart, it's not the same world, and it's getting worse. And I'm not saying, I guarantee you, I don't think the dollar is going to collapse. It can last a long time. But this drawn out agony that we're in and the destruction that it's causing in the rest of the world, I want to stop that.
Agreed.
I didn't vote for all of these things that we're doing right now, and I'm tired of it. Yeah. You know, I want us to get into a Bitcoin world, where a more peaceful, sound world where money has value and I can hold it across space and time, and I can relax and just take a damn breath.
Yeah, there's a book that says leisure is the basis of culture too, right? Or where it's in these periods of respite where we have the freedom to think and experiment that we do a lot of the creative work that makes civilization what it is. There's also it's been said that the state is the great fiction that we can live at the expense of someone else. And like, that's not true. That's fundamentally not true. Like, each individual is ultimately responsible for themselves.
Exactly.
We all need each other. We need to be interdependent. But when it ultimately stops, it's like, you as an individual, whether you're capable of it or not, no one's coming to save you, right? You might have someone in your corner. You might have family, friends that will help you. But at the end, when push comes to shove, you do have to count on yourself. And that, that's the truth. Like, I don't know how you could even argue with that. And so this idea that, oh no, we can just pass laws and universal basic income for these people and we'll just tax the rich, and like, no, you're destroying the incentives for people to be productive, to pay for people that are non-productive. It's like, and look, I'm not anti-charity. I'm all for charity, but like let that stay in the domain of charity. You can't coerce charity.
The Wall Street Journal just published an article recently. The top 1% wage earners, or income earners in this country, they are responsible for 40% of the income tax that's received.
Exactly.
The top 10% are responsible for 70%.
Yeah.
You get down to the top 25% wage earners in this country, they are responsible for 90% of the wages that are garnered, or not, the wages that are paid into income tax in this country.
The wages that are stolen.
We're taking, I didn't say that. I thought it. We're taking $5 trillion in a year. We're spending $6.8 trillion.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of
the difference.
We've got a math problem here, and the math problem is getting worse.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm concerned about. Going forward, something is going to give. I was fortunate. I got Larry Lepard's book, The Big Print in Galley.
Yeah, we got it right there.
Oh, cool. And then he, when it's published, I ended up getting a copy of it so I could read it again. And, I agree with the fact that something's going to happen fairly soon. Now, what is that going to be? We're either going to default on all that debt, which that'll never happen. We're not going to default. There's no reason for us to do that. And that would be catastrophic. You're talking about gold. We would also need some bullets, like some food,
of course,
water, and probably a good dog to keep you company.
100%.
Because, and when your neighbor comes over, you got to decide whether you're going to give him some food or eat him.
It's not a world anyone wants.
I don't want that world. Yeah. We are going to end up debasing our currency, and we've got to. And so if you're listening right now, you got to protect yourself. This is your opportunity. This is your window, and it is rapidly receding. Yeah. I talked to you about buying a Bitcoin at $1,700 for a tenth of a Bitcoin. If you can get a tenth of a Bitcoin in the future, you are going to be in a great spot. Most everybody listening is not my age. You're sure not. Most of the people are going to be out there working. You're going to be working and doing something productive for the next 20 years. You don't want to be sitting on your ass. So get a tenth of a Bitcoin, sit on it, and continue to stack once in a while, work, and you will have all the wealth you possibly want. Albert Einstein is quoted as being that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Yeah, I don't think he actually said that, but it sounds so cool coming from Einstein. But the thing is that it is.
But the point that you're making, if I may, is like it simplifies and clarifies your life, right?
Exactly.
All you got to do is do something productive and spend less than you earn and save. Right? It's just classic grandma's wisdom. Just put it in the piggy bank. Just don't put it in an actual piggy bank.
No, don't put it in dollars.
Put it in the digital piggy bank.
Exactly.
I put it in the Bitcoin piggy bank. And then your savings will compound at whatever.
Who knows what it will be going forward. It probably is going to be very, very large.
But it will compound. And anything you save not in Bitcoin is going to counter compound, basically. It's going to deteriorate.
That's the key. Yeah. And then to just live your life. And as I mentioned, you and I have a train. We're on the Bitcoin train. You and I, we got it made. Some people we know, they're set. We got people, we look out to the left, out the window, and there's people standing on the platform. Some of them are tired. They got multiple kids. They're not on the train. Yeah. And so, if you have people you love and they, my kids, like if they think that there's something wrong with you and they're not stacking Bitcoin or worrying about Bitcoin, well, guess what? You stack for them then. You do what's right. And someday when you're gone,
well, thank you.
They'll have a ticket magically appear in their hand, and they'll be able to step on board the train and go somewhere. Yeah. And if you got people you love or your friends, that's the reason we come off as a cult. That's why people don't. That's why people throw us out of windows and we don't get invited to parties because we're like a cult and we talk about it. Yeah. And so, you do have a responsibility to be, maybe a good host and a good guest and not bore people, but nonetheless. The reason we are like that is we see it. You and I see it, Robert, and we want people to get on board. We just want them to have a nice life.
Yeah, this one, I'm so glad you brought up the cult word because I love it. I think it's so interesting. What is a framing here? Like the cultivation of any culture begins as a cult, right? It's in the word. Cultivation of any culture begins as a cult.
I like that. I had not thought of that, but yeah.
It's just a small culture, basically. And so when you call us a cult, it's not, I don't take it as an insult at all. I think it's a compliment. It's like, oh yeah, we're progressing. We're on the cultivation path towards a full-blown culture. I wanted to say this is something, taking it back to art and propaganda, because there's one other major definition of propaganda that I've thought was very useful. We've already said it's this pseudo form of art that doesn't really stand the test of time, right? But it can be difficult, as we just saw going through the pandemic, right? When people are staring at propaganda and they think, oh no, this is the right thing to do, right? Nobody's safe until everybody's safe, right? I need to get the jab for grandma, or whatever the propaganda you've ingested and are now regurgitating is. It's definitively propaganda. We're not even 4 years after the fact and we know it's propaganda. So in the interest of trying to give people something to like figure it out on the spot, right? It's not so useful in retrospect, because we can all tell it's propaganda in retrospect, but there's a healthy portion of us, roughly half the world, bought this propaganda at face value at the time of the event.
I did.
There you go.
I don't mind admitting it. I did.
And it's natural. Like I've fallen for it, right? Like I fell for the whole the Middle Eastern propaganda, right? That there's some interminable religious conflict, ancient, and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, no, it's a modern genocide. That's what it is. Thank you, Bitcoin, for showing me that. Thank you, Bitcoin Rabbit Hole. The definition of propaganda I wanted to propose is, I'm just paraphrasing here from someone, I don't even know who. The purpose of propaganda is to make one group of people forget that another group of people are people. So in the pandemic, we had this whole, vaxxer, anti-vaxxer, right? You assign these labels to dehumanize people and, to ultimately get to this point in cognition or orientation towards them that you can justify atrocity, right? When people are literally saying, throw these anti-vaxxers in prison, put them in camps.
That's the common thread.
Kill them. It got very dark.
Yes.
And no one wants to talk about this. It's like, let's forget about all that. But like, it happened, guys. Like I hate to be, don't shoot the messenger, but it definitely happened. How can we equip people to deal with that propaganda when it's in their face like that so that they can discern propaganda from non-propaganda?
Oh, man, I tell you, that's a tough one. That's a really difficult, I don't know what the answer to that is, because, if you take this, if you really think about this deeply, most people don't realize this, but the average adult reading level in this country is that of a 11-and-a-half-year-old kid.
Crazy.
Maybe 12.
Wow.
And so you have to realize that, again, if we're on that train station, we are going to leave some people behind. And going back even earlier to our conversation, there are going to be some people that are convinced everything ETFs, Bitcoin ETFs, evil. Mm-hmm. There are going to be some people that you just cannot get them to understand what you're discussing. Mm. And every society that has done some of the things you're discussing has used that technique to marginalize and isolate a group,
right? And
pilify them.
Yeah.
And I just know that as a good human being, every day I try to live my life. I have 4 principles: honor, integrity, strength, and kindness. Those are my things that I live by. You can tattoo those on your soul, and at the end of your life, when you look in the mirror, none of that stuff that you're talking about, you'll be able to fight that and do the right things, so that, what is that saying? Ethics is doing the right thing when no one's looking.
Yeah.
And it's just a deep core belief. And if you've got that, you're set. If you don't, I strongly encourage you to continue reading and studying and understand what it means to question narratives.
Yes. No, it's well said. As someone that you said you fell for that propaganda when it was up close, like, would it be, in retrospect, would it be useful for you to have more deeply internalized that Nietzschean phrase, right? Everything the state has is a lie. Everything it has is stolen. Everything it says is a lie. Do you think that, because what I'm trying to understand for me, like myself and hopefully other people, like, how do I discern, right? When I see a message coming at me, how do I discern what it is? And this sounds radical, but if the state's saying it, a really good heuristic is it's probably a lie. And now that's overly simplified. And like, if this, obviously if it's game theoretic and the state knows that, well, they'll just say the thing that's true and then you'll invert it and think it's a lie and then they've got you, like it's not that simple, but I'm trying to get to something that's useful for, even your former self that was dealing with that situation. What do you think would have been useful for you in that time?
Are you the same after that pandemic? Are you the same?
No, of course not.
I'm not either.
No. Everything that we like talked about abstractly about Bitcoin and I've been in history books about, all of a sudden was like very real and happening really fast all around me.
And so what is the key there? You've got to, at the end of your life, and I can, at some point I can see that on my horizon, but at the end of your life, you are exposed to so many different things. And it is up to you. You mentioned this earlier. It's on your shoulders to try to learn these lessons. Now, I learned a lot of lessons from that. And you wouldn't think at my age, as smart as I was, and I was into Bitcoin then, that I would have unquestionably followed narratives. But I will say that in the heat of the moment, I did. But the thing is, I have learned from that. I'm not the same person I was even then. And again, I think of it as this particular space that you and I operate in. Yeah. It causes you to constantly question and constantly to think and to read and to study. You could have easily, actually it was very difficult then, but you can now. You can read some of the studies that were follow-ups and see that misinformation caused a lot of damage. Just look at what it did to our economy. I mean, destroyed us. 40% of all the dollars we fucking printed them in 5 years. Yeah. From the time that I was talking about, from that first national bank time, when we founded our country up until 5 years ago. Yeah. And, we've printed some dollars in the past, but nothing like what we did here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I guess the humility, you're right. It's, you need
ego.
It's always going to be difficult to discern, but if you at least have the humility, as you are doing now, right? I've changed over the past 4 years. You could not have changed. I heard it put this way, that curiosity is an aspect of humility. You cannot learn what you think you already know. So if you were very staunch in your position 4 years ago, you wouldn't have learned anything, right? You'd still be sitting here like, no, I still think I'm right and blah, blah, blah. But no, and maybe it's a Bitcoin thing, maybe it's a wisdom thing, maybe it's a you character thing, but like you have enough humility, obviously, to have learned from the experience and changed your opinion. And maybe that's all we can do. Maybe we can't discern it when it's up in our face perfectly, right? We're going to make mistakes, right? Of course, we're going to make mistakes, but to have that humility to learn from those mistakes.
Humility. I just love that, Robert. Ego is the ego builds walls where the mind wants vistas. And if you just drop your ego, you are standing outside. Yeah. I had an ego so big I needed to carry it around in a wheelbarrow, coming out of a fighter pilot community. Yeah. Did you know one of the things in Top Gun that's interesting is when you go through Top Gun, one of the things that is involved in that is not air combat. We used to call it ACM, air combat maneuver. It's just dogfighting, you know. But one of the things that's really important has nothing to do with dogfighting. It has to do with after the dogfight. Yeah. Because, I was doing that every day. And I got pretty fucking good at it. I could smoke somebody's ass pretty quick if they didn't know what they were doing, even in an F-18. Even my stupid little jet that I had. But the thing is, the key was, how do you debrief that? How do you go into a ready room with other pilots, and they all have egos as big as you. In fact, many of them are bigger than mine. How do you deal with people like that? And it was a very interesting experience. It all was all about humbling yourself and understanding that it's all about teaching. It's trying to learn. Yeah. So I had a terrible ego, and the best thing that ever happened to me was that incident I was alluding to before, the one that just crushed my spirit. It was the best fucking thing that ever happened to me. Sitting in those ashes, when I came out on the other side of that, it was the best thing in the world. It's why I can look back on some of these past events, admit that I made a mistake, and realize, because of what you said, humility. And if you can't drop your humility and admit that you've been wrong. You know, Larry Fink on national television recently said he was wrong. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I was wrong about Bitcoin. What's it take to get a guy like that, you know, to admit that he's wrong? It's not that hard. Just so, you know, just humble yourself out there. If you're having problems with ego and you know what? You talk about a relationship with your spouse, the person you love, or your girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
Drop that ego, and then you can sit there and just listen and relax. And you know, it will help you so much.
Yeah, amen to that. That's great. Great connection too. The spirit of learning and growth is only possible with the humility. And the other thing that I think about a lot is that as things are changing more quickly, as things are accelerating, not only are things moving fast in the digital age, but they're accelerating, humility becomes more and more and more to premium because you know less and less and less. Yeah.
You know, there are people that their humility will carry with them to the grave. That debate you had with Peter Schiff was brutal. I won't, you know, I turn that clown off anymore because he's so disingenuous. He'll say, well, Bitcoin isn't limited to 21 million. And then he'll just be quiet. And you're going, oh, what a fucking idiot. So then when you're done, do you go back to the conversation of what you were talking about originally? Or do you just look at him and go, are you a fucking idiot?
So I don't typically listen to these after the fact because I don't consume much audio or video content at all. Like when I'm traveling, if I'm going through an airport, like I'll listen to something. I listen to stuff in the car sometimes, but usually audiobooks. So I basically don't listen. I don't consume much audio video. So obviously I don't consume much of my own. However, that particular debate, I got so much feedback. People were like, oh my God, thank you. You finally did it. You finally dealt with him.
I finally had to say, I've had enough of this guy. He just bothers me so much.
Yeah,
but I know, I watched like a third of it. I mean, it was a good debate. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I listened back to it and I thought it was, I thought I did okay. Like, I don't know. I just did. I agree with you. Like he's a very disingenuous actor. You know, he's trying to just, you know, add homonyms and interruptions and loud. But then he's also, what he's actually good at is he has a good Austrian economic footing, but then he'll just take it whatever direction he wants. Like he'll say like, oh, this is what it's based in. And then he'll just like go over here with it. And so the whole like intrinsic value argument, I'm like, come on, Peter, are you kidding me? Like I literally quoted Mises to him.
Yeah.
You know, value does not inhere in things. It exists within us. It is how we respond to the conditions of our environment.
Yes.
There is no such thing as an item with intrinsic value. Yet here he is, intrinsic value, and then it's like, then he's getting into the regression theorem and then the industrial use value. So like, I try to clarify all of this and just say it based on what I've read.
Exactly. And you're good at least being able to keep track of your thoughts enough to do that. But the bottom line is when other people that he's debated don't have that ability necessarily to stay focused or to stay on conversation and topic, and he disrupts their ability to do so.
Yeah.
And I just find it a really, there's a nastiness to it that I don't appreciate.
I agree with that. And I tried to mute that for myself.
And
as he was doing it, I tried to just keep going.
You're good at that.
I tried, but
you have a focus.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier. You're focused.
Yeah.
And you need to be focused in life. If you're going to be successful, you got to be focused.
Yeah.
Driven. Know what you want, focus, but at the same time, don't just like when I was in the Navy, just push people aside as you step over them to get what you want.
Right. Amen to that. Yeah.
And, you know, I wanted to fly fighters and nobody was going to stop me.
Yeah.
Nobody better get in my fucking way, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now.
Well, that's good. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. bitpro.com/breedlove. Knowing when to buy Bitcoin can feel complicated, and knowing how much to buy can be overwhelming, and getting started can be a headache, but it doesn't have to be. That's exactly why I recommend Coinbits, because it solves these major blockers and it's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. With Coinbits' Roundups feature, you can automatically convert your spare change into Bitcoin while you shop. For example, when you buy a coffee for $3.50, the extra 50 cents is rounded up and it goes straight into Bitcoin. Here's why that's a huge win for you, because you don't have to be a tech wizard or try to time the market just right with Bitcoin. With Coinbits Roundups, you simply set it, shop, and stack sats. And you can set this up in under 2 minutes. Just visit the website, connect your card, and boom, you're buying a little Bitcoin every time you spend money. So stop wasting your time with complicated exchanges or confusing shitcoin apps. Coinbits simplifies your Bitcoin savings strategy. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove. Again, that's coinbits.app/breedlove. You know, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you are a graybeard, sir. You are 70 years old, so you are in the seat of wisdom. And you are someone that a lot of young people would look to for advice, tips, just general life philosophy for how you have gotten this far to living the dream life that you say you live, right? And you're obviously in good health and you're of sound mind. So like those are all big accomplishments at your age. Nice. How do you, you've got kids. How do you advise them, or how would you advise young people? Your kids, you said maybe kind of still the verdict is out with them on the Bitcoin thing, but maybe it's just some people, let's say some young Bitcoiners that are looking to you for advice on how to lead an exceptional, free, resilient life. How do you point them?
I would say that I first off, as we already said, I've made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes I've made the same mistake over and over, like with no apparent learning curve. But what? And here's the other thing too. When your kids, like let's say that one of my kids came up to me and asked me for some advice, just said, "Hey, what do you think, Dad?" I would really hesitate to give them advice. Just think about if it was the wrong advice to begin with, and you had to live with that for the rest of your life. But secondly, people seem like they have to find they have to learn their own lessons as they go through life. You can't short circuit that. Yeah. Some people have got to sit in those ashes. Yeah. Some people have got to lose everything. Mm-hmm. Some people have got to make bad mistakes. Mm-hmm. Some people have to, lose the love of their life. I mean, they have to watch them walk away because of something they've done wrong. Mm. And even though it might be the only time you get that one shot in your life. So I can say that looking back on my life, one of the things that I'm glad is that I never just settled. Mm. I never just let something define the career for me. What if I'd been down there in that mine? You know what it was like down there, 10,000 feet down? Mother Earth has got one goal. When you dig a hole down there, we call them drifts, tunnel is what you guys would call them, but you dig a drift down there, Mother Earth has got one goal, and she just wants to fill that thing back in with dirt, water, whatever it gets. And you're just full of muck. You're walking around, things are falling on your head. You come out of there, you're brutalized at the end of a 12-hour shift. And
12 hours.
What if I'd spent my whole life down there in that, mine? But I wanted to reinvent myself. And what if I'd let being a cop define me, and I was sitting here 20, 25 years at the end of it, I don't know where my soul would be. Or what if that was to define me? Or what if I just stayed anything? What if out in the oil fields out there out in Wyoming? That was a crummy life. Mm-hmm. So, don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. And, the key, it's funny because one of the things I don't even feel competent to give any kind of advice because things are changing. You mentioned this already. Things are changing so fast, so rapidly. Do you need a college education now? Are you going to be able to do some of the things that college education did before, a skill set, like whether it's accounting or coding or, a lot of different things? So I don't, my advice is limited to the following things. Like I said, live your life with honor, integrity, strength, and kindness. Work out, make that part of your life. Eat right, keep an open mind, be nice to people, engage in conversation, don't isolate yourself. If you're lucky like me, at the end of your life, you're going to find something like Bitcoin that can challenge you, mentally challenge you for the rest of your life. Let me ask you, you think you're ever going to be done with Bitcoin? You're going to know it?
Absolutely not. No, that's one of those beautiful things about it is you can just pour your curiosity into it endlessly and it always yields something.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
It's an incredible rabbit hole. And if you continue to learn, if you stay humble and you keep your humility in check and you continue to learn, you're going to be sitting here like this. You get that damn Bitcoin. Like I said, you stack the Bitcoin. Stack like a smart psychopath. That doesn't mean just buying like an idiot. It means what you should, I follow charts. I mean, even though I'm not buying, I'm all in. I don't have any money to buy Bitcoin right now. So I'm at peace because you know what? I don't have to worry about buying anymore. Yeah. I'm out of money. So what I'm going to say is, I watch the charts for a reason. There are good times when you can buy more Bitcoin than others. There's that Meyer multiple. Thank you, Trace, if you ever hear this. There's a couple other ones. If anybody wants to DM me on Twitter, you can, and I'll tell you which ones I use. But that can tell me where we are in the market. So you just need to stack the damn Bitcoin like a smart psychopath, hodl through conviction, reading, and study, and then don't lose the damn thing. If you don't understand what a market call is or margin call, if you're leveraging yourself out there, you're an idiot. If you're trying to use some of these products built on top of strategy like MST X and Y, these double volatility ETFs, you're an idiot and you're going to lose it. And you don't want to lose a Bitcoin. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Just get a little bit of Bitcoin and sit on it and then start living your life. And you're going to be like me. You're going to be my age. You're going to be out there kicking ass, taking names with balls the size of church bells. And you're going to be out there having a great time. And, it's going to be a wonderful life for you. All you got to do is just hodl and get the Bitcoin and keep those people you love around you. And if they don't get it, stop trying to be that uncle at the dinner table that everybody's going, Jesus, he's here again. Just, don't try to get everybody on board. Just stack for them. Just stack for them and you'll be fine.
I got to tell you, man, we live next door to a church here, and I hear the church bells ringing every few hours.
That's me.
And I've always thought it was really peaceful and nice, but I think you've totally ruined it for me.
I'm sorry, bud. But, the only reason that I can say that is because, you know what? I'm convicted. I don't lay awake anymore. Yeah. I'm convicted. I know what the hell I hold, and nothing's going to shake me out. My Bitcoin is in that fist right there, and nobody's going to pry that loose of me, until I'm ready to give up some. Yeah, nobody's going to get it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and not your keys, not your cheese. Obviously,
I love that.
Hold the Bitcoin, right? Not the claim to the Bitcoin, the actual Bitcoin.
Although, as I said, I do have some ETFs, but I also have cold storage.
Right, and it's of course like if you want, just know the risk you're taking, basically, right? If you're borrowing against it or you're holding the ETF or whatever, it's like, well, you're taking certain forms of risk that you wouldn't be taking holding it yourself. Now, there's also benefits to it, right? Potentially, ETFs have a number of benefits if you're investing through tax-advantaged accounts or whatever it may be. Obviously, if you leverage, you can get some loan liquidity on that. But this is the second part I wanted to bring in. Is like, not only does you need to have it in whatever form you want, but you also need to study it. Yeah. Right. The study, as you alluded to at the beginning there, it's like, it is this other fascinating thing about it. Like, not only is Bitcoin this financial center of gravity that's devouring all these other asset classes.
It's like a black hole.
It is like a black hole, but it's also a philosophical and intellectual singularity or black hole, right? It absorbs, if you study it and you let it absorb your mind, I mean, I'm reading all kinds of crazy stuff. I told you about the, book on Celtic reflections. Like, I don't know how I ended up there. I've read books on like the origins and history of consciousness, and it's an endlessly fascinating rabbit hole. So for people that are curious, that like to try and understand the nature of reality, I don't think there's anything better to study in the world.
I agree. 100%.
And you wouldn't like at the surface, you wouldn't see that coming, right? Like, what do you mean? It's just money, but
it's just magic internet money.
Yeah.
And when I say a black hole, a black hole is where we're going with this. I mean, in the sense, just like you said, it seems to be drawing in. So, if you look at what's happening right now in institutions and where this is going, and they're not even here yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they're inside the perimeter. We set up the tripwires, the flares are in the air. They're in here with us, but they're not in force. I used to think they were, but you know what? I've been reading some data lately, and they're not really even here yet. Yeah. You know that the ETFs right now are being held almost 80% by retail, high net worth individuals, not corporations. Wow. Wirehouses aren't even here yet. This is going to take off. And, in a black hole, you get to the singularity, and nothing inside that black hole is ever observed again on the outside. Right. Once you get in there, and you're going, once you're past there, you're going to the you're going to the middle, the singularity.
Right. Yeah.
And we're headed there. And it's going to be a great world. It's just going to be unbelievable because we may have, Bitcoin may just be part of a basket of currencies. It could be like a Bancor, originally from the Bretton Woods. Yeah. It could be, a base money in many ways, but it will be there, and it will be that foundation to money, not currency, money. And we're going to rest, we're going to relax, have a great time, build a lot of shit.
I like that. The rest and relax. That's very important. That's a big aspect of freedom, right? That you actually, what is a vacation, right? You take that one. And then it's weird. Like, it doesn't mean you're just going to relax forever. Like, maybe when you get to be your age, you're doing more relaxing than someone at my age, perhaps. But for me, the feeling has been giving me the freedom to do the things I really want to do. Like, I'm not leading a super relaxed lifestyle. I'm actually pretty busy all the time, but it's things that I choose. Like, I'm choosing the challenges that I'm engaging with. And then if I want to take time off, obviously I can take time off.
I love that. It's the freedom. That's you nailed it. Because when I say I'm rest and relax, I mean, I'm not sleeping in and eating donuts. Sure. I mean, I'm interested. I'm doing stuff. I'm a hunter. I hunt with a bow. I go out and kill things. Yeah. And when I go out to this place that I go, it's far back, and it's like a primitive area. And I go by myself. I take a backpack on, I stick it on there, and I have a weapon. And I have a bow, and I hike back there, and I'm in there. Sometimes I'm in that valley. It's a 5 mile long valley, and I'll be 2.5, 3 miles in. I'm the only living human being in that valley, and just with all those critters around me. And you know what? I love it. So, and I climb up and down mountains. I chase elk up the fucking side of a hill. I mean, I'm having a great time in life, slipping around, crossing streams, calling in animals, and so I'm busy. It's just I'm doing the things that mean something to me, that I'm enjoying. Yeah. Like scuba diving. Man, that's a blast. And there'll be something new soon. And and that'll be you out there. That's going to be all these people that are listening to this. You just got to get through a tough time. We're going to have a difficult period coming up here, but you know what? If you do what we said, you'll get through on the other side, and you'll have what you said, freedom. That's what you want.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, that sounds like some awesome freedom, man. Bow hunting in the middle of nowhere and scuba diving. Like, what fantastic ways to flex your freedom.
Instead of eating donuts.
Yeah, for sure. Where are you going to focus your energies over the next year? Are you going to keep doing these types of things? Are there artistic projects on the horizon for you? Like, what's on the horizon?
I just did a painting, which was really cool. For the first time, I painted in acrylics. I haven't done that before. It was a blast. You can get some wild colors with acrylics. I mean, ones that almost like glow, glow in the dark kind of colors. And I did a great painting of, the CEO, and I've got air quotes for people that are listening, CEO of Bitcoin, Darian Nakamoto. And it's a great painting of him. And in it, I embedded a BitX miner, one of the little, it's a Mars lander, and it's got lights on it, and it glows. And so I'm enjoying doing a little bit of Bitcoin art. Some of the paintings I've done are Bitcoin focused. We talked about the cover. I did the cover for Bitcoin is Venice.
Oh, yeah.
Larry Lepard bought 2 incredible pieces that are almost like the history of Bitcoin One is called God Bestows Bitcoin to Adam. It's a powerful piece. And then right next to it is Eve. I won't disclose the model's name, but it's somebody you know. And between the two of them, it's pretty powerful image. He bought those, and then he's let them on loan to the Bitcoin magazine, that museum, I guess they're doing.
Oh, cool.
And and so I still may do some of that. I just did a show recently over in Sarasota that was all traditional art, and it was successful. And so we'll see. I want to travel some more. I'm going to go to. I'll be at Prague. Bitcoin Prague. I might go down to El Salvador again.
Nice.
I like traveling. I want to continue this diving thing and photography. It'll be an interesting year, but I'll tell you, I've got a lot on my plate with Bitcoin, things I'm interested in. I'm really interested in scaling. I'm very interested in this Tether, where it's going. You know, they've got less than 100 employees. They did $14 billion of profit with that employees last year. They've got 100, listen to this, Robert, they've got over 100 billion treasuries. U.S. treasuries. Yeah. And that's more than Germany. And it's expanding. They grew 50% in 1 year. So where's it going to be next year? Are they going to be the 6th largest treasury holder in the world?
That is such a staggering business to me, because it's so
incredible. And what's his overhead?
Simple in a way.
What's his overhead? Is he running, let me see, is he running Amazon warehouses anywhere that I can think? Does he have a whole fleet of Amazon trucks running around?
That's why he has 100 employees.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm surprised he has 100, honestly.
So I'm very interested in that. And to see where this goes. I'm really concerned about scaling with Bitcoin. I want it to scale. I want it to be successful. Many people, you and I are privileged. We've operated on the base layer. We've had a blast, sending sats around and everything. But people on the base layer in the future, they're going to be, it's going to be hard pressed to do that. And Hal Finney, you mentioned him earlier. Yeah. He talks about that. He said it would be rare to operate on the base layer. And he talks about where this is going in his mind, and tokenized banks, and I can see that. We've already got State Street, Citibank in the space, and more want to come. Bank of New York is working for Blackwater now with, so that's coming. We're going to see some products here coming pretty soon.
Yeah. The singularity is eating the financial world, right? And it's also, as it eats our mind share, it's also eating financial infrastructure and products, and it's weird. Yeah, everything. All roads lead to Bitcoin.
I agree.
And I don't know. Yeah, it's been a strange journey to more or less have been singing the same tune for about 8-9 years now. But again, how much the public response has changed, because 8 years ago, you were certifiably insane. Literally, talk about, you weren't even a cult. You weren't even at cult status. You were just institutionalized insane person.
You weren't even really. The thing is, when you look back, you could not say, like I just said a little while ago, you could not say that Bitcoin wouldn't fail. You could not say that.
Of course.
And in 2010, after it had gone, it did fail. I mean, we had a hard fork, the overflow incident with, what was it, like 180 billion Bitcoin mined by one person on a block. And so, there were failures at different times. Those people that were there and convicted through that whole period are a very unique group. But that doesn't exist. We're not in a cult. Some people might say that, but we're becoming a culture. As you mentioned, we've gone past the cult. We are becoming culture, and it's going to get more and more. Those people who just can't stand Bitcoin
and the derangement syndrome,
they're going to have a really rough life.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a rough 2025.
They're going to have a really tough time.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I always joke that if we are in a cult, at least we're in the cult with the best money.
And the best people. Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin is like a black hole. And what's it suck in?
Smart,
sucks in the best.
Disagreeable, entrepreneurial, ethical people. Yeah.
Moral and ethical people that are aligned with a lot of really neat values.
Although I'll tell you one thing that's been funny to me in that journey is and I say this as someone on the not the Myers-Briggs, the Big Five personality test. I'm like a 1% on the agreeable scale. So like in a room of 100 people, I'm the most disagreeable guy in the room.
Wow.
That's very common among Bitcoiners. And so it's kind of comical to me to see how much infighting there is among Bitcoiners all the time, which is a feature, not a bug. It's like everyone's adversarial thinking all the time, but it gets a little overblown. Like people just talk so much shit, and
Well,
the contrast between Bitcoin Twitter and Bitcoin in real life is so night and day.
yes.
You know, Bitcoin in real life is like a love fest, and Bitcoin Twitter is like a hate fest, basically.
And I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a failing of mine. You know, that's something I want to change. And, you know, it's part of my New Year's resolution is to just be more like that. Because you are absolutely right. And I'm guilty of that. And it's embarrassing. And again, you know what? You can get to my age and you can keep making the same mistakes over and over again, like a village idiot.
Yeah. And like, to what extent does the algorithm or X or whatever the platform is incentivize that behavior? You know, like it's not just, are you an asshole? Well, I am more of an asshole on Twitter than I am in real life, right? Because the incentives are different. And so there's that component to it, right? I don't want to like just say, oh, everyone on the internet's an asshole, because it's different, right? In different contexts.
Yeah, but you know, for some reason, Bitcoin and Twitter seem to bring out a lot of that.
It is a jungle out there, to say the least. But then I always encourage people like, well, go to a conference and see what it's like in real life, because it's the opposite.
Totally.
Like I have, you know, it's almost all bad interactions. Not all. There's many bad interactions on Bitcoin Twitter. I've had 0 in 9 years in person in Bitcoin. Like 0. You know, I go to these conferences, I meet thousands of people in a day, and I have 0 bad interactions.
Yeah. Says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, just don't judge the book by its cover, I guess.
We're in a cult.
We're in a cult. George, thank you so much. Appreciate you making the trip to Miami to talk to me. This has been awesome. Where can people find you on the internet, and where can people find out about your artwork?
Well, if you just type my name in Google, I'm the first thing that comes up, George Bodine. And again, you know, that's like I said, I was originally trying to kind of almost like Homer Simpson in the shrubs, you know, where I'm trying to back in there. But the thing is, I realized I can't. I'm doxxed, and I take a lot of precautions about that, but I don't want to talk about that right now. Just type in George Bodine, or on Twitter, I use my call sign. It's capital JETHROE, and because I'm a boomer, I just stuck 111 on the end. And you know, I don't have a clue why I did that.
Jethro. That's so Jethro of you.
But just do that. And you know, just in leaving here, again, thank you for having me here. And, you know, I'm hoping that we do reach some people today that maybe aren't hardcore Bitcoiners, and people that will think about what I've said here. I just cannot emphasize enough to you how Bitcoin can be that escape from the hamster wheel. It can really give you a whole new future. And it can make you very relaxed, not eating donuts, but relaxed, having a great time in life, and doing things, and free. Yeah. That's the key, isn't it? Yeah, and free. Yeah. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, sir. This is great. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.